first presenter today. So thanks everyone for being here and for taking time out of your Saturday to tune in. I'm Jackie Tolge. Know most of you as I'm the coordinator of transition services. This is the third Saturday session of the Saturday Transition Institute, and today's theme is on employability skills. And again, super happy that you're here. I know all of us have a lot going on the weekends, and excited that you're able to take the time to learn more with us today. So as you saw on the flyer that was shared, our Saturday series has 5 different Saturdays, each with its own theme, and each run from 9 to noon, and the time is divided among the 3 seminars. So for today, we're going to be hearing from experts in the employment world, and we're going to be starting with Dr. Kimberly Osmani. Today's seminar is being recorded and will eventually be available through MyPLN. Closed captioning is enabled, so go ahead and click on the CC if you do want to. I saw some of you already did that. Throughout today, if you have any questions, please ask using the Q&A. It's much easier for us to track than the chat for questions. Also, so you can plan accordingly, we won't be taking any official breaks, but rather a super short pause after each presenter to switch over. In the chat box, you'll see me share a link to the resources organizer, which shares slide decks, presenter contact information, and resources for all 3 of today's presenters. And also included is a link to the feedback survey. And I'm going to remind you at the end to please take a few minutes to complete it. And again, thanks a lot for being here today. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first presenter, Dr. Kimberly Osmani. Dr. Osmani is a senior extension associate at the Yang Tan Institute, which on employment and disability, which is at Cornell University. Her background is in special education and vocational rehabilitation, with an emphasis on the transition of students and youth with disabilities to their adult lives after high school. So enough of me. I'm gonna go ahead and disappear from your screen and hand it over to Dr. Osmani.
Thanks so much, Jackie. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Let me go ahead and pull up my slide deck, and everybody should be seeing the full slide. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody letting me know that you're seeing the correct slide? Great, thanks, Jackie. What dedication you all have. There's about 100 of you here dedicating your Saturday morning to professional development. If that's not dedication, I don't know what that is. So thank you all, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you to talk about employability skills. That obviously we're here to talk about students and youth with disabilities, but a lot of these skills apply to every employee that is out there. So we'll talk about some of those and how we work collectively as a group to help get our students and youth out there in the workforce. So I just wanted to share a little bit. So I do want to tell you the slide deck is in that organizer that Jackie mentioned, and I put a few hyperlinks to some resources. There's also a resource I have that I'm going to end up sending to Jackie so that she can send it out to all of you that isn't online. And I'll do that after the presentation, but I did want to mention that, and I'll be sure to mention what the resource is later. So just a little bit about my journey, who I am and how I got to where I'm at Cornell. Just like all of you, we all have employment journeys, and that's what our theme is that we're going to be talking about today. But I was a special education teacher. I do work for Cornell University, but I do it remotely full-time from my home office in Norman, Oklahoma. I've been doing this for over 5 years. So I worked remotely before remote work was cool. But I was a special education teacher in Florida. I'm from Florida. I went to the University of Florida, and I taught my first year in Boca Raton, teaching an elementary classroom, K-5, of students that had an emotional disturbance. And then I moved to Oklahoma, and I went to the high school level. So I taught high school for a few years. I taught middle school for a few years. All in special education, students with learning disabilities, ADHD, some other health impairments, some physical disabilities, as well as the emotional behavioral disabilities. And then I had the opportunity and crazy idea that I wanted to go work at the State Department of Education, which I did for about 4 years. I tell people it was a job where I probably learned the most, a wonderful experience in terms of what I learned, and an experience I hope to never have again. It was a very stressful position. I went through various positions. I started as a compliance monitor and complaint investigator. So I was the one out there going to the school districts, monitoring IEPs and, interviewing staff and looking at the compliance end of things, and then having to investigate those formal complaints that may have been developed. I then got I got promoted and did different things in there, but that's where transition was just a little bit of my job. I formed a statewide transition council, an Oklahoma Transition Council, that we ended up having it's still in existence. I chaired it for 16 years and finally stepped off a couple of years ago. And with that, we had a statewide transition institute. And transition just became something that I wanted to spend more time doing. And that's when my partners at the Department of Rehabilitation Services, or you guys are probably familiar with, I think in California, do you guys call it DOORS or DARS? But here in Oklahoma, they call it DRS, Voc Rehab. They said, hey, will you come and be a full-time statewide transition coordinator for us? And that's what I did for 9 years before I took this position at Cornell. So I really have a passion for working with youth and young adults and the professionals who are supporting youth and young adults with disabilities, and really focusing on what's going to happen that day after they exit high school. Are things in place? Have we passed the baton? And are we setting them up for success? So just wanted to share a little bit about my background. If you have any questions as we go through, please don't hesitate. You can raise your hand and probably come on mic, or I'm happy for you to add it to either the chat or the QA. And so why am I passionate about transition? It started when I was a middle school teacher, and I had an opportunity to work on a grant with Jim Martin. If any of you are familiar with the infamous Dr. Jim Martin from the OU Zero Center for Learning Enrichment, he's now retired, but he was like the guru of transition for all of us for many years. He had a grant where teachers could participate and teach their students how to lead their own IEP meetings. And so I engaged in that grant, and I had curriculum from them that I would implement with my students to teach them that. And then he and his graduate students would come and observe my lessons. They would observe my IEP meetings. They had little clickers, and they tracked who was doing most of the talking during those IEP meetings. So you've probably seen some of that data out there about those studies. But it really gave me that bigger picture, that the piece about how we really need students to be self-determined, knowing about their disability, knowing about how it affects them, knowing about what accommodations help them be successful, and then being able to advocate, take that information and be able to communicate and negotiate. And so those things really appealed to me. And for me, it was really just seeing so many students that weren't connected, families that were so ingrained in the day-to-day survival that they couldn't think about what's going to be happening about after high school. And so all of these things that you see on this slide, and there's that kind of word, what do we call those things? Word art or word cloud that is developed from different words that embody transition. And it's, living and daring to dream, and looking at college and career readiness, and focusing on strengths, all of those things that are helping students and youth build those skills for lifelong inclusion in our community, full inclusion in our community, and having a full life. So why is this important? I'm going to introduce just a little bit of data. So if you like data, you'll be happy. If you don't like data, I swear it's just 2 slides. But when we look at comparing labor force participation rates of people with disabilities versus people without disabilities, and this is reported just in February of this year, but reporting on 2022 data. What we see are, this is for individuals who are 16 and older. So for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, when they do reporting of this age group, it's 16 through like 65, I think is what they collect on. So that's what you're seeing here, those age groups in a collective group. And we are looking at, in the dark, I don't know what color that's showing up for you. It's kind of a teal on my end, but the dark teal color represents people without disabilities, and their participation rate in the labor force is at 68%, as opposed to that lighter bluish gray color is only at 23%. And we're looking again at that collective 16 through 65, comparing people without disabilities to people with disabilities. Similarly, when we look on the right side of this bar graph, we see the unemployment rate of people without disabilities being at 3.5%, but for our people with disabilities, it's 8.2%. So visibly, you can see the gaps that exist. And what I want to share here is when you're looking at labor force participation or unemployment rates, those numbers only include people who are actually reporting. So there's a whole group of people out in our society that aren't reporting data. And so I wonder if it was reported, would we see even larger gaps? Would we see smaller gaps? Because there's just a lot of folks that don't participate in the reporting of this data when they're doing these statistical analyses. So we've always known that a gap exists, right? That's what we're trying to do. That's why many federal laws like IDEA and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and the Perkins Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, like all those things are in place and putting forth legislation to support bridging this gap and making it not such a dynamic gap between people without disabilities and people with disabilities. So I'm going to narrow that age group just a little bit for us and go to this next slide where we're going to focus just on youth. And so what I've done here is broken down information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics based on age groups. So the age group we'll look at first on the left are 16 to 19-year-olds. And again, comparing those without disabilities to those with disabilities and participation. And so again, we can see a gap. Youth between the ages of 16 and 19 that do not have a disability are participating in the labor force at a rate of 33%, as opposed to our youth with disabilities who are at 23.3%. Similarly, and when we look at that, I mean, that makes sense, right? We're seeing a lower participation rate of students with disabilities because they're in school. Kind of that's that age range that we see as in school. And not every student or youth has an opportunity to have a paid job while they're in high school. Some of our students have really hectic schedules and a lot of outside activities that prevent them from having a job. But when we look at that next group, the age group of that 20 to 24, those are probably some of our out of school youth that maybe have graduated or reached the age of majority or maximum age of eligibility. Maybe they've dropped out, or maybe they're in career and technology education. They're doing some type of education or training program. Maybe they're in college. And so that's kind of who we're looking at in that 20 to 24 year age range. But again, we still see a gap. People with disabilities are only participating in this age range, 20 to 24, at 42.7%, as opposed to their peers without disabilities at 67.3%. So these, I mean, they make sense to me given those differences in age groups, but I'm wondering, when you look at this slide or the previous slide, are there any thoughts that come to mind as you read these statistics? And again, feel free to put something in the chat, QA, or come on live and talk with me. I don't enjoy being a talking head, so I love engagement, and you'll see that in some of the activities we've got built in today. How about thumbs up? Is this like does it make sense to you? Is this kind of what you expect, what you see in your day-to-day, that you see these discrepancies still? Yeah, more than doubled. And yeah, your biggest fear is that you definitely have students that are in those groups. We definitely need to improve these statistics, right? And that's why we're here. We're talking about it for sure.
And I see Gladys has her hand up, so I'm going to give her, hopefully she wanted to do that. Gladys, if you want me to give you access to talk. So we have to, because we're in the webinar format, they do have to raise their hand, and then we have to give them that allow to talk, but I'm happy to do that, Gladys. If there was something that you wanted to say.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Yes, I was going to say, of course, even with employment and also discussing and looking at data nowadays, also in academic achievement for our students with disabilities, we see that equity gap. So definitely. And the question rises, like, what what can we do? You know, we see it in other metrics and also after, you know, the students graduating. So I feel it's very important.
Right. And those are some of the indicators that the state has for the state performance plan, right? Is that we're increasing those graduation rates of our students with disabilities, and we're decreasing the dropout rates. We're looking at indicator 13 for all those transition components that are built in. And those are the things that are supposed to help leverage, right? Leverage these opportunities. Thank you for that. I see a question from, I hope I don't butcher it, but LaDon or LaDan, what percent of people in those statistics had physical disabilities? I don't know, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics in that document didn't necessarily have it broken down that way. So I apologize, I don't have that that answer.
And I also brought Marco up. Marco also raised his hand. So Marco.
Oh yes, I was gonna just, I guess, mention like it also like on a more general or from a more general perspective. I think like the culture of like of what it means to have a disability or how it relates to like the I guess what you want to call the real world is different too, because it's almost like we have this, like we have accommodations and all kinds of assistance for students when they're in school, but then once school is over, it's like, okay, goodbye, see you later. And then, you know, and like anywhere they work at, I'm not sure that there really is enough like support for them. So
Right.
they tend to like, you know, I didn't really see any data on that, but I'm pretty sure they tend to like not get hired as often or lose their job for whatever reason having to do with their disability. And I think that we need to do a better job in.
Yeah, there's definitely barriers in that realm as well. And I'm just gonna, I don't know how many of you are familiar with, you know, your Voc Rehab agency, but that's one of the most beneficial resources you can get students connected with as early as the VR agency will allow. I don't know in California if it's 14 or 16, but they're the ones who can continue to provide some services even beyond high school, and your local developmental disability agency for those that would qualify under them. And I see, is it Heger? Do the statistics differentiate between those with disabilities who don't work because of maybe their needs, or those whose families don't want them to work? Again, I don't know that, but it would be based on, did those people respond to the survey and the data that the Bureau of Labor Statistics collected? And again, you know, a lot of people don't self-identify as having a disability. So there may be even gaps in the data regarding, you know, could it be higher because some people don't self-identify as having a disability. So thank you all so much. I'm seeing a few folks, hopefully Jackie, you're seeing some of those messages where some people are having a challenge getting logged in. So I'm gonna move on, and I appreciate you helping folks get on mic. So I'm gonna walk you through a quick activity. And this, if you're like me, sometimes when you go to these trainings, you're like, oh, I don't want to do an activity, or you're going to make me go in breakout sessions, you know, I'm logging off. Hopefully you don't do that, because this is going to be fun. I want to engage us in this fun activity that's going to kind of help let all of us go down memory lane, which we don't often have time to sit and reflect on our own employment experiences or employment journey. And so this is what I like to call my first jobs activity. And I'm hoping that we can do it in 10 minutes, because I know that we're really rushed for time and getting all of this done in an hour. And I want you to know that you're more than welcome. Like, you have this slide deck in the organizer. You can take this and use it with your colleagues, replicate it, tweak it, however you want to do it. I actually took it from Jim Martin. He did like a one question kind of activity, but then I expanded upon it after he and I had done it. But when we go through this, you'll see why I would love for you to go back to your schools, into your buildings, and do an activity similar to this with your staff, because everybody on here gets transition, and we have high expectations, and we know the values and contributions that our students with disabilities have to the community, to employers, but not everybody in our building may have those same thoughts or same high expectations, or realize the contributions that can be made. And so when you go through this experience with them, it's kind of eye-opening for them. So my first jobs. So what I want everybody to do is, I want you to either take out a sheet of paper, Or if you're on your computer, maybe open up like a Word document, or if you're doing this on your phone, maybe go into like your notes thing that you have, but it's going to require you to jot some things down. So I'll give you a second to figure out what you're going to do it on. And what I want you to do, and this isn't anything you're submitting, this is just for you. I want you to like number it from 1 to 10, or you can just number as you go. Some of you may have much longer lists than others. So here we go. I want you to go back in your brains and jog your memory to think about every single paid job you have ever held, whether it was an on the books job or an off the books job. And I want you to start like from the beginning. If you started babysitting or mowing lawns or dog sitting at the age of 11 and you got paid to do that, I want you to start there, and I want you to do it chronologically. So this is where, we'll kind of sit in silence for a couple of minutes as you all are jotting down every single job to now, your current position. And I've already done this for myself, and I'll be sharing mine after we kind of go through the activity and talk through some of the things. And there's a rhyme and reason to this. So we'll give you just a couple minutes to do that. And Tanya, I see your question in the Q&A about, are there incentives for companies to hire people with disabilities? And yes, 100%, there are tax incentives. In addition to, some individuals that might have support through supported employment, who might have a job coach or someone who is there to support them and, as needed on those jobs. But yes, there definitely are tax incentives for businesses. Okay, so you can continue writing. If you're like me, I'll show my age. I'm 53, and so I have lots to share when we get to mine. But go ahead and continue writing if you haven't finished all of yours. And we'll go through the steps of what I want you to do now. So the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is go back to that very first job and write down how old you were at that very first job. And if I could ask all of you to just put in the chat, how old were you? Because I can't see your papers. So how old were you in your first job, your very first paid job? Just curious. Oh my goodness, Eileen, 6. I think that's the youngest I've seen yet. I'm curious what you were doing at the age of 6. 15, 16, 12, lots of teens, 11, 12. All right. Babysitting. Amber says maybe around 7 or 8. Okay, Eileen was doing, so you were doing household chores and you got paid to do that. Okay. Don't let my kids hear that in the background. All right, so we can see a wide range. And yeah, it's mowing lawns at the age of 10, paperboy, right? And when I've done this activity, there's a lot of people who, if they've lived on a farm or they had a family farm or something, they started really young ages doing some of those things. 13, 12, yeah, a bakery at the age of 12. Okay. Oh, your father's lab, Monica. Blockbuster Video, Araceli, and those don't even really exist anymore. Sad. Okay, yeah. Amber, yep, your dad's restaurant. Yep. And 19. Okay, so yeah, so I'll try to share some of these things because I'm seeing that you guys aren't able to see what people are. So that's why you're not seeing them. They have it open to us. And Brian says he worked at his dad's clothing store and he was a pizza man, distributing flyers. Wow. Auto parts, mowing lawns. Okay. So lots of you at early ages, right? Some of you even before high school, some elementary, middle school and high school, you had experiences and you got paid for. Jackie, did you want to share something? I saw you come on screen.
I updated the chat settings, so now everyone can see. So chat settings have been updated.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so keep these things in mind as we go to the next slide, and I'm going to walk us through doing some of these additional activities and looking at some pivotal points in our employment journeys. So I want you now to go back to your list, and I want you to write down near the jobs you had when you were age 16. And I want you to write down the jobs you had when you were 18. And when you look back at the jobs you had at 16 and 18, if you are in those jobs today, I would love for you to put something in the chat. Say, yes, I'm doing the job today that I was doing at 16, or yes, I'm doing the job I was doing, or I wanted to do, or I did at 18. So I'm not seeing anybody who's doing the job that they did when they were 16 or 18. And so one of the things I like to share is sometimes when people are working with students with disabilities or people with disabilities in general, it's like they feel, and this is some employment service providers, some of your community rehab programs or your vendors in the state who look at getting the job for that student with disability, like that's going to be the only job they ever have in their lives. And I hope through this activity, we see that that's just not going to cut it. And I want you to look back at your list now. We're going to look at the next rectangle. And I want you to think about how and why you got your first job. How did you get your first job? Why did you get your first job? Why did you start working? And you don't necessarily have to share, but I want you to be thinking about that. Maybe the how you got your first job, maybe it was a family connection or a friend of the family, or through a school, a teacher or somebody, right? So I see LaDawn saying, yeah, through a family member, working as a babysitter for a neighbor, right? So we all have different reasons of how we get that. And then the whys, like, did you do it because you were bored? Did you do it because you needed money? Did you need to help contribute to the family? Was the only way you could go, get ice cream, or nowadays Starbucks and an acai bowl, was to go earn your own money? There's so many different reasons why we get our first job, or jobs in general. Maybe our friends work somewhere. We want to hang out with our friends, right? And earn money at the same time. That's a win-win. Using money for our extras, or helping in a family business, and it's expected. If you have a farm, you have a family business, it is most likely expected you're going to help in those businesses, right? And our students with disabilities have those same needs, wants, and opportunities as we all did. Now, I want you to look back at your list. We're looking at the red rectangle now, and I want you to identify by circling or putting an X, whatever you want to do, or write the word adult. Write down next to that job that you felt like, I feel like it is at this point in time in this job that I felt like an adult. And if anyone wants to come and share on mic, or you can put it in chat, why did you pick that job? Why that job? What was it about that job or that situation that said, I'm really feeling like an adult now? Amity says, I still can't believe I'm an adult. I know. So what was it about that timing that made you feel like I'm an adult now? And Jackie said, if you want to speak, go ahead and raise your hand, and she'll make it so you can unmute your mic. Right, Brian, I hear that one all the time when I had to file taxes, right? I felt the woes of adulthood. Yes, when I'm done with all of you today, I get to go and prepare my taxes because we filed an extension. That's what I'm doing today. LaDawn says, I was getting paid and I was being counted on for my responsibility. Okay, so that's what made you feel like an adult in that job. Same kind of with David, responsibility, being paid. Rubicelli, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. You felt like when you worked at a preschool as a teacher, you were paying for your own expenses, right? Yeah, helping your parents pay bills or a bill. Being responsible for another human being as a nanny. I love it, Julia. Yeah. Having a steady income or working a regular set of hours. Yes. So when we've done this activity before, it's all of those things. Like I felt like I was an adult because I was paying taxes. I was paying bills. I got benefits from my employer. I was working full time. I was working with mostly adults instead of working in a job where maybe I was working with students, or I've moved out and I have my own home now and I have all these bills, right? Or I had to file taxes for the first time, whatever it is. We see those wide ranging of like, this is when I feel like an adult. And for many of you, there might have been several jobs before that job where you actually felt like an adult, right? Okay, now I want you to go back to your list, and we're in the green box now. Identify the job that you were in where you feel like I finally discovered my passion. This is my passion. And for some of you, maybe you haven't found that passion yet, or maybe it's a recent job. I'm curious what job you had where you finally discovered your passion, or how old you were when you were in that job where you discovered your passion. I don't know what DOTS is. You'll have to share that with me, Marco.
That's our department.
Oh, that's your department?
Marco just started with us this year. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. That's wonderful.
I love it. Thanks,
Yeah,
Marco. That made my whole Saturday.
So Heater says, I was 24 and I was a sub at the LA Unified School District, and I was working in special education classes, and that's how you got your passion. Okay. Volunteering. Yep. Okay. Figuring out that that's what you wanted to do. You're a teacher's assistant in college, got a TA job. Okay. Early 20s. Yeah. 19, 20, shifting from preschool to special ed at 24. Okay. You guys can see the wide ranging, reasons and types of jobs where you discovered that passion. So the next one is the orange box. I want you to think about what types of things influenced some of the changes. So when you look at your list, you had changes, right? You went from one job to another job. What might have influenced some of those changes, and who might have influenced some of those changes? If you want to share, what were decisions that made you change from one job to another in your timeline? And was there somebody maybe who influenced that change? And it can be everything from I quit that job because I was in a toxic environment kind of switch. Yes, there was a toxic supervisor or whatever the case may be. Anybody want to share in the chat? Older friends helped you, professors in school made a big difference. Okay. Your own personal growth. I love that, Romero, right? So you're growing and you're like, okay, I need a change. I need a shift. So looking at the labor force in the big picture, I love that. And then looking at, identifying those interests that you have, right? Going to school helped you make that change, having a supportive leadership, that hunger for continued growth. I love that, Jose. Coworkers. Okay, your mom, the influence of your mom or the influence of a teacher. Okay, so there's lots of different factors that go into affecting why we change jobs and the jobs that we go to and when. And then I'm not going to ask you to share this, but some of you, and some of you might be doing it now, if you like, you might be having held more than one job at a time. When I was a teacher, and you'll see reflected in my document, I held like 3 or 4 jobs at one time just to make ends meet. I was a teacher. I worked at Gordon's Jewelers. I was a waitress. I was a bartender. I worked for our AAA baseball team all at the same time to make ends meet as a teacher. And then lastly, sorry, my kids are supposed to control the dog if they start barking. There we go. And then the last box, which I kind of started with in the beginning, is, are you where you thought you might be when you were 16 and what your dream job was? Or are you where you thought you would be at 18, or even when you left college, if you went to college, are you doing what you thought you'd be doing at that point? Are you doing that right now? Because I know I'm not. And some people say yes, or close to it, not at all, right? Yeah. Not at all. Yeah, I had no idea at that. Right. Neither did I. Yeah, partly somewhat. You thought you'd be working for the fire department. Wow, Julio. Yeah. Change your values that are more important than the past. Okay. Thank you all so much for sharing that. And so all of these things that I had you kind of identify or reflect on, I want you to now put yourself in the perspective of any youth, but specifically a student and youth with a disability, and how we want them. They all need to have these types of experiences. We're not just getting them the one entry-level job that they're going to be in for the rest of their lives because we weren't. And maybe it is. If it's their dream and passion and that's what they want to do, it might be for some people. Some people grow up knowing they want to be a teacher. I was not one of those people, but yet I became a teacher. Some people have it in their whole family history. My mom was a teacher, my grandma was a teacher, my great aunt was a teacher. It's just ingrained. But there are many people who you guys work with daily that say, I don't have a clue what I want to do. And so we want our students with disabilities to have opportunities to experience typical teen jobs, typical tween jobs, and elementary jobs, like some of you that were 6 and 8 and 10. We want them to be able to leverage connections and relationships just like we did, because they have friends, they have families, their families have friends. They frequent businesses in the community that they build relationships with. They can leverage those same networking opportunities. These jobs gave all of us an idea of what we liked and what we didn't like. As you went through your list, I'm sure you could identify at least one where you really didn't like what you were doing. And we don't know it sometimes until we try it. And then giving just opportunities to try those things out. And the reasons why we work, same for our students with disabilities. We want those experiences. We want to grow. We want to earn money. We want our financial independence and be able to spend it on things or contribute to the family. And building those social connections that we do through our jobs, our friendships, being able to interact with people we don't go to school with, being able to act with adults in that kind of environment, earning money, saving money, spending our money, and helping to guide that future and our path. And so I want to pose to you now, because I know you all work in the field of transition and special education, is, do our policies in your school district or even in your individual school buildings, do we have policies in place that maybe create barriers to really being able to provide these opportunities equally for our students with disabilities? And that's just a thought-provoking question, not one that you necessarily need to answer, but a question I would encourage you to go back and ask and look at your policies. Will the district only let them do work-based learning in the schools, or will they not transport? Whose responsibility is it? All those kinds of things that tend to create barriers for us giving our students access. Is it the liability that businesses don't want? Like all those things. And I haven't looked at the chat, so let me look real quickly. Okay, yes, thank you for that. So I want to share just really quickly with you some of the things about my journey. And I told you I had a long list. And one of them, that number 4, just happened in March of this year. So this is my career pathway. I started, babysitting at a young age. And if you look at my 1 through 4, those are all in my teen years and through high school. So from a babysitter to a bread bagger. So there was a bakery behind where I lived. And this was before the Subways baked their own bread. And the bakery behind me did the baking of all those sub rolls that would be delivered to the Subway. And we would go in at like 3 o'clock in the morning and bag bread. And then I had friends who worked at the local Dairy Queen. So guess what? I wanted to work with my friends. I was 16, I was playing softball, and I decided to stop and start working, which I somewhat regret looking back on it. And then I worked at a Bressler's ice cream, which is kind of like a Baskin Robbins. And by that time I was in my senior year and I had enough credits where I only had to go to school half a day. So the other half a day I worked. I had that opportunity during high school. So those were all teen and high school. Then number 5, I worked at Tommy's, which is an Italian restaurant. I started as a hostess and then was able to go to a server, which I think I also was working at Granger, if you know what that is. It's one of those experiences I never want to have again. I was so not equipped for that job, but I did both of those simultaneously well. I was in community college, and that's a time where I did feel like I was becoming an adult. I had the influence of the other staff who were all older than me, way older than me, especially at Tommy's. It was a much older workforce. I had opportunities for promotion from hostess to server where I could earn more money. It had a family feeling to it working in that place. And number 6 with Granger is where I realized what I did not want to be doing at all, but it paid great money. And I stayed home and I was in community college. So one of the things I didn't mention, going from Bresslers to staying home and going to community college, is my mom was also terminally ill. And so I wanted to stay close to home and not move away to college. And so I was able to graduate with my associates during the time that she was sick and right after her passing. And so I stayed home. I had those jobs. I worked, so I had money. It was that family atmosphere that helped me stay at Tommy's throughout that time frame, even though Granger made more money. And then my mom passed away and I ended up going to the University of Florida. So you see, there's reasons. We all have reasons. Everybody has a story. This is just my story. You see the ones in yellow, 7 through 9. This is when I'm at the University of Florida. And oh, by the way, guess what my major was? I was a business major. I was going to wear a 3-piece suit and be a CEO of a corporation. That like Amanda on Melrose Place, if you remember that, if you're my age. But I had to have jobs while I was in college. And so those were the jobs I had in college. Then I became a special ed teacher. I'll tell you how that happened. I hated the 1 year I did at the University of Florida in the business program. So I did my 2 years of community, got my associates in business. 1 year, hated it, went to an advisor and said, I love children and I love social work, but I don't want to be a social worker. And she said, have you ever thought about special education? And I said, no, but I'll give it a whirl. And guys, that's how I ended up in special education. Ended up loving it, of course. And I didn't find my passion until I was probably in my 6th year of teaching, and I got connected with Jim Martin and got introduced to secondary transition. And that's where I just went off the charts with that. And that was probably in that 11, 12, and 13 kind of range in my job. So here I am halfway in my career, and I'm just figuring out that it isn't necessarily just special education that I like, but it's the secondary transition piece of special education that I love. Right. And so you can just see the things that have changed. But I use networks and relationships to go from working as a special ed teacher to working for VR. And so our students have those same opportunities, and we want to make sure that we're leveraging those. Any thoughts or questions about this activity before we move on? Because I know I don't have time to go through all of this, and I want to get to the other meat of this training. All right. Well, you all know, because I saw it mentioned in the chat, but having paid work experiences while students with disabilities are in high school is one of the many predictors of post-school success. And this chart on here shows you, if you look on the second column, which is the predictor and outcome, and you go down to the 4th bullet that says paid employment and work experience, it is shown to have an effect on the education, employment, and independent living outcomes of students with disabilities. And so this is not news to any of us. We know how important it is to have those experiences. I did put a link to a resource in your organizer on the predictors of post-school success. Excuse me. So this is critical for us to have that. And you see the other ones that are here. And if you follow the link to the other resource, you can read much more in depth about the other predictor areas. But work does have so many benefits, and it does impact our students with disabilities. It is supported by research that we've got to expose our students with disabilities and to the world of work and have them engage in these paid work experience. Now, unpaid experiences have benefits as well, but the research shows that the paid ones have a more increased improvement in the outcomes. Some of the additional research says that work experience has consistently been one of the most important predictors of post-school employment for our students with disabilities. So our colleagues at the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, previously NSTAC, but David Test and Eric Carter and some of these others who've done that research have shown it really truly is a critical piece of the puzzle for students with disabilities. And there's different aspects of those high school work experiences that tend to be highly correlated with them achieving competitive integrated employment outside of high school, and increased wages, increased hours, increased access to benefits from employers, all of those kinds of things, increased job satisfaction. And what we also find is almost 3/4 of individuals with disabilities who maintained some type of employment while they were outside of high school, so after they exited and they maintained employment, had some types of paid experiences or training while they were in high school. So I want to pose a question to all of you that you can put in the chat. And I think I heard a little bit earlier, but what are some of the things that cause our students to not be successful in school that might translate to not being successful in employment? Not having confidence, right? So lacking that. Oh, and both, yeah. So confidence and self-esteem. What else? Because I know a lot of you are helping students access these opportunities and some of them are not successful. Why? Maybe what other people tell them. There's no independence at home. Yes, they're not even asked to do chores at home sometimes. The social skills. Yes, Jose, that's a big one. Lack of the social skills that end up affecting them in the workplace. Sometimes the label of a disability might cause them to be unsuccessful. There might be some family dynamics going on. Absolutely. The lack of self-advocacy skills. Yes. So lots and lots of reasons why. And so we know that some students don't necessarily have role models in their lives that are demonstrating a strong work ethic or even working. If we have that generational reliance on some of the Social Security benefits, we see that tend to trickle, generation after generation. So keeping in mind that some of our students might need a little bit more concrete exposure and experiences and instruction and role playing in some of these areas to be successful. Thank you for sharing those. So before we jump into what some of the research says the employers are looking for, I can't emphasize enough how important it is that we talk about customer service. And if we were in a room together, I'd probably say, Yahoo or oh yeah, if you agree with this, because in almost every job we have or aspect of job that we have, there's some level of customer service. For example, all of you are customers of your HR office, of your IT office, and I've experienced not being treated so nice as from my own HR office in previous agency jobs. And so we all have a level of customer service that we need, whether we're working in an airport or retail or food service, whatever it is. You could even be a stalker in a store, stalker, S-T-O-C-K, not stalker, S-T-A-L-K. That, maybe that's your job, is just to stock shelves, but it doesn't mean that a customer in the store is not going to say, excuse me, can you help me find, or excuse me, do you know where or how I can? You still have to be able to interact with those individuals. And so I'm laying a foundation here that customer service is a critical component and oftentimes very challenging to teach, requires a lot of role playing, and talking through. And this is something that I'm going to say we start teaching even at a very young level with our own children through manners. Thank you, please, not interrupting with someone else's speaking, like all of those things that we start very young. I don't want to miss out on the chat, sorry. Yeah, okay, the church said amen, thank you. And so moving on, that's just that foundation. This is a graphic that kind of lays out some categories that are truly important of what employers say are critical for employees to have. And there's 6. I'm going to start at this or kind of a clock, and I'll start at like 1 o'clock. This one category is under communication, whether it's verbal, written, nonverbal, through email or any other documents they have to write. Phone skills, critical and creative thinking, leadership, self-management might be a biggie. That social responsibility and collaboration and teamwork, right? So all of these are key categories. Also professionalism, having a strong work ethic, being honest, working on our social skills, keeping our word, being on time, all those kinds of things, having a good attitude, right? Sometimes we're asked to do things in our jobs that we don't really want to do, we have to do, but we need to have a good attitude about it, because those are things that might make us lose our job if we don't. and the ability to learn and to have resilience. These are key things that have been pointed out. Here's some more concrete ones listed out on what employers say, that they want employees who do these things. They want employees, and here's, I'm going to ask you to do something as I go through this list. If you click on, I think if you click on annotate should show up on your Zoom controls. And if you would click on annotate and then click on stamp, and you can choose a stamp that you want to use. I want you, as I go through these lists, to put one of your stamp next to the item that you feel might be the most difficult to teach or for your students to master as I go through this list. So we're going to use that annotate function. So being self-motivated, having ideas, taking initiative, and maybe even delivering more than is promised or expected. Being flexible and eager to learn new things. Being easy to work with, being positive, having some conflict resolution skills and negotiation skills. Having a large network and being active in professional organizations. That's kind of a new one that we're seeing. Informing supervisors of problems and proposing some well thought out solutions. Being organized and able to multitask, being punctual, behaving professionally, meeting deadlines without reminders. The drop down's not working. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. You could put it in the chat too if you want to, if you can't get the annotate to work. I'm sorry, I don't know why that's not working. But out of this list, because there's another list on the next slide we're going to look at, what do you think on this list, if you want to put it in the chat, is the most difficult for the students that you work with? 2 and 5. So being flexible, learning new things, and informing supervisors of problems. Yeah, being motivated. Yeah, having a large network. That's something that needs to be developed and crafted over time for sure. It takes a while to build that, even for us. All right, thank you. Let's go to the next set of slides. And I'm not going to go in depth, and I'm not here to teach you how to do these things. The request was share with you what are the things that the employers are looking for. And a lot of these things haven't changed over many, many years. Additionally, the employers are looking for employees that take responsibility, right? You make a mistake, own up to it, that you can be reliable and honest, that you understand when to discuss things. You understand when to follow instructions, maybe when to not question things, or when the appropriate time is to question and how to question those things. This is a big one. I know I hear a lot, especially still in the field, being able to accept and give criticism in a professional manner that's being able to receive that constructive feedback as well. Having, excuse me, strong communication skills. It could be written, verbal, making presentations, formal and informal, and making the employer look good, making the supervisor look good, lightening their load, helping lighten the load of others. You know, how many people have you ever worked with where their job was done and they just sat there and did nothing else, and they didn't offer like, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? I'm done. Like, being able to have that skill is really unique. And then wanting to do it is a whole nother thing. So we notice these are all behavioral. These are the soft skills. None of these things that I have mentioned, other than making a presentation maybe or something like that, would be considered a hard skill. These are behavioral characteristics that need to be sometimes explicitly taught, sometimes explicitly done through role plays and scenarios. So thank you all for engaging in that. And then here are some of the things employers have said, you know, these are things that don't do me well in my company. I don't want employees who are going to do this. I don't want people who are going to have to wait for every single instruction, or who are going to do the bare minimum in their job, or be resistant to change. Now, we know for some students that like structure is very important and change might be difficult. Let's put the supports in to help when those changes take place. Or if people aren't interested in learning new skills. They don't want people who are going to have a lot of conflict with supervisors or others that they work with, or maybe resist or complain, or they're not going to compromise. Maybe they don't want people who are uncomfortable, who don't want to network, who don't want to engage with other groups of people in professional settings, or even go beyond the 9 to 5. I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you, because here you are on a Saturday. This is not your work day. This is not your work time. You are going beyond the 9 to 5 schedule with your professional time. And people who bring problems to the supervisor and expect the supervisor to solve everything. Because you saw in that previous slide, they want them to come forth with suggested resolutions or be able to brainstorm with them and come up together. People who are chronically late, disorganized, unprofessional, rude, abusive, or who really require one-on-one supervision. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to have people who are going to need support in employment and have a job coach who might support them, but not a day-to-day, one-on-one kind of situation in a business in the community. And then additional things that the employers said they don't want are employees who make excuses. They hide their mistakes. They blame others, or constantly debating and questioning everything, taking things too personally, becoming very defensive. And you guys could do probably semester-long lessons on some of these areas that I know you're probably sitting here identifying situations you've been in before with students or with employers where these were the things that caused them to lose their jobs. And having unclear communication or disinterested and making not really wanting to help the business really thrive, just doing what's necessary to get your job done. So these are some really challenging areas to address. But these are the things that, like, if it were me as the teacher sitting in this training, I'd be like looking at this list saying, okay, how am I going to address some of these? Or how do I address it? And being able to share with my colleagues how I do. So the importance of employability skills, I know all of you know this, but again, really important. The research shows us that a lack of these employability skills is also contributing to a talent shortage that we're facing. And that when you can demonstrate those high employability skills, then obviously you're going to experience higher rates of getting jobs. You're going to probably have more retention in your jobs. You're going to earn more money and have more success in those. And I linked to the resource that gave this information. I wanted to share one thing with you too. And this visual, I tried to find other versions of it that were more like crisp, and I couldn't. So I hate that it's just a tad blurry, but you have it anyway. And this was out of, I think, either Australia or British Columbia, or not British Columbia, but the UK, where they actually took a soft skill, and this is the manufacturing industry. They took a soft skill and they said, what does a workplace behavior look like, and how does that really impact the business? So for example, someone who has good soft skills, the way it's demonstrated is they're going to sense potential conflicts, and they're going to be able to act on those conflicts and coordinate and resolve them with others. And how does that affect the business? Well, that's going to help the business improve their production, be more efficient, and retain their workers. And this kind of reminds me of that, how will I ever use algebra kind of thing, where they made all these posters with like the 100 ways that you use algebra in work. And this is what this makes me think of, is like, here are the social skills. What does it look like? And how does it impact the business? Excuse me. I know we only have a couple minutes left. This is a quick poll I was going to have you all do. If we could bring that up real quickly. I just want to see, who do you think benefits from work-based learning experiences that our students can engage in? Is it the students? Is it businesses? Is it families? Is it your schools? Is it the community as a whole? All of the above or none of the above? What do you think? Who benefits? We've got almost half of you. We've got 122 participants. Let's see if we can get the majority of you. And you can only choose one answer. You can change it once you click it. You can go back and unless you hit submit already. So I'm just going to share. The answer is all of the above. Everybody benefits from students having these work experiences. So you can just show you how it resulted here. The majority of you did say all of the above, right? There are absolutely benefits. We talked a lot about, the benefits of students, but these businesses benefit too. They're building a talent pipeline. They're getting to train students. They're getting to see how diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility benefits their businesses. The families, all of them have benefits. We could go in detail. Excuse me. Hopefully you don't hear that siren in the background. Every Saturday, our tornado siren gets tested. So it's being tested. And Jackie, I know we are out of time and you're going to move over to the next presenter, but the content that are on the next few slides really are just beneficial for all of you to read through. It's flipping the script a little bit on what the employees want and are looking for today. And I would really encourage you to talk with your students to see if this is in alignment with what they're looking for today, because our generations are very different. And I really wanted you to engage in that first jobs activity, because I think that in and of itself, I hope you'll go use it. And I hope that you got something out of it. So thank you all for being here. And I'm sorry that we didn't get through everything.
No apologies needed. Oh my goodness, the presentation was fantastic. You can tell because of the level of engagement. So thank you to everyone for being so engaged in the presentation. And I'm just going to, in the chat one more time, drop the link to today's organizer where you can find those last slides that Dr. Osmani was referring to, and where I will be updating it though to include one more resource that Dr. Osmani wants to share with you. So please take a look later today at the organizer, because I will have it updated before the end of today's webinar. So thank you again, Dr. Osmani, for your presentation today. I actually was texting some of my colleagues like, oh, I'm going to steal a few of these slides because they are really relevant to our work. And so for all of you in the audience, we're going to call this a coffee refill break. We're just going to take a quick moment to adjust between presenters. And so we'll see you back in just a moment or two. And if you don't need to get up and do anything, you can absolutely just stop and take a look at the resources organizer while you're waiting for us to adjust over. And so Ms. Greenfield, let me make you a co-host.
Hi.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
I'm going to give them
Thank
just one more minute. I'll do the quick introduction and then I will hand it over to you to get started.
Thank you.
Okay, so while everyone's returning to their screens, I will just introduce our next presenter, Linda Greenfield. Linda has a master's in guidance and counseling from California Lutheran and an MBA from USC. She's a certified master of career services. I'm excited to hear about what that is, as designated by the National Career Development Association, NCDA, and is a certified resume writer as designated by the Resume Writing Academy, RWA, and was awarded Best of for career coaching by LinkedIn ProFinder. She is the owner of Essential Career Counseling, where she assists clients of all ages and stages. Linda also provides career services to USC alumni and California bar members. She has been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the Chicago Tribune, and the Sacramento Bee, and has presented on a variety of career topics. And so I'm super excited for today's presentation. Anne and I have been talking about it. And so I'm going to actually hand it over to you and let you go ahead and get started. The chat is working, as is the Q&A. So feel free to refer our participants to both of those. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here and lots to talk about today. So I'll get started because I am covering both resumes and interviewing. So there's a lot under both of these topics. So starting with resumes, and please definitely put things in the chat if there's things that you want to stop and ask about. I'll be stopping for questions at the end of both of these sections as well. But we will go through everything that we need to talk about. Hopefully we'll get through everything. But in terms of resumes, strategies for writing a resume, the different sections, some do's and don'ts, talking about those soft skills, those I'll go by very quickly because they've also been covered a little bit in the prior presentation. Show you a sample resume, and then I want to bring up ChatGPT. So, this is a whole nother thing here. But strategy. So when you think about writing a resume, helping somebody write a resume, what do you include? And it all starts with the job description. So when you think about whoever wrote that job description, what do they need to do that job really well?
I'm just
So,
gonna jump in really quick and ask, were you gonna be sharing your screen as well? Because we cannot see it right now if you are.
no, it should be. It should be. Hang on, I thought it
No
was.
worries.
That was weird.
There you go. I can see it now.
All
Oh,
right, so
I'm
let's go
seeing
back.
it. Yes, if you want to go. There you go.
Yeah,
Okay,
you go.
great. There you go.
So that was weird. Anyway, let's keep going. Um, so when you think about what is needed to get to do the job, whatever that job is, starting with the job description. And there are always things like these soft skills, sometimes called transferable skills, that we've already talked about a little bit. Sometimes there's hard skills, and for everybody, even things like, can you do Word or Excel or operate any sort of office equipment, and up to things like programming languages, some more advanced hard skills, and things like industry knowledge. So if you've got a lot of years of work experience in a particular industry, you've got that industry knowledge. But even for somebody who has no work experience, who's just starting out, if they're applying for a job at a fabric store and they love to sew, they've got industry knowledge. So anything else, like applying for a job at a grocery store and in the bakery, and they love to bake, they've got industry knowledge. So these are things that everyone has, and they grow if you do stay in the same industry. So conveying strengths that are relevant to what they're looking for. So in terms of what goes on a resume, definitely starts with a header. What is included with that? Contact info. So zip code, this is something that could be beneficial or not. So there's no need to put on street addresses at all anymore. Definitely suggest not to. If you're looking for a remote position, you don't even have to have any address information at all. And then in zip code, if they're applying to work in the same zip code they live, that would be a reason to have it on. If they're applying to work at a location in person, that's a different zip code that would take 2 buses and a half a mile walk to get there. Even if the candidate is willing to do that, happy to do that, it might be better to leave it off, because there might be a concern. What if the bus isn't on time, or what if there's a problem? So definitely think this is part of that strategy. Should you put a zip code on or not? Phone, email. So this definitely professional email. So you will be amazed to hear some of the emails that I've seen over the years, from Party Girl 1 to Rockin' Grandma to all kinds of things I wouldn't even want to say right now, but it should be a professional sounding email. LinkedIn. So, if anyone has a LinkedIn, you could put that on as well, particularly if they've spent some time to work on it. Definitely a trend for high school students to be on that. So what else? Summary, this is optional. You could have a summary section, certainly for mid-career and higher. It's a necessity. It's really the branding area. Education, yeah, absolutely. Definitely for students, the first section, if they're not doing a summary. Relevant coursework. So, it could be something that they're studying is relevant to what they're applying for. Honors, if there are, absolutely. experience, all of these things are possible sections as well. So sometimes there's academic projects that could be really useful too, that demonstrate certain skills that are relevant. A skills section, languages, campus involvement, any kind of clubs that they're in, leadership, clubs could be sports as well, any other kind of activities, volunteer. All of these are possible resume sections. So if you or your student that you're helping want to consider a summary section, this is about what do you bring to this job? And it could be something as simple as this: hardworking, reliable, high school senior, eager to learn new skills and assist customers. So, addressing some of those soft skills, those transferable skills, we've already talked about. And then when you think about writing your experience section, you want to make sure when you think about your bullet points that they're high impact bullet points, and there is a way to write them. So even if it's something like babysitter, so this is a place that a lot of people start. What do? I babysit kids. I'm still doing it. Fine. An improved experience here would be childcare provider. Does sound a little bit nicer. Created the childcare business at age 12. So what does that show? That shows initiative. So that's one of those skills that employers are definitely looking for. Proactively solicited business from friends, community, and church. So another skill, proactive. That's great. They didn't just wait to see if people contacted them. Even better, designed advertising for next door, church newsletter, increasing business 90% in 3 months. So any place you've got a result or an impact or something good that happened, always want to include that. If you can quantify it, even better. Developed engaging activities for children 3 to 8. Again, this is proactive. Didn't wait around for the kids to be needing some sort of activity, proactively thought about what is needed and worked ahead of time to develop these activities. Ensured all household safety rules and routines were maintained. So what does this show? You can, this person can follow rules, and all workplaces do have some sort of policies, procedures. They want to know that those can be followed. Routinely requested for repeat childcare jobs. So this shows that this person is doing that job well, which is really something that you want to show in a resume, not just what you did. This absolutely babysit kids, that's what this person does, but to show that they do this job well. So any job that they've done, and even like you all have done a lot, have done childcare, babysitting as a first job, second job, how can you show that you were good at that? So another example, household chores, also cited as one of the first jobs. So cleaned up, absolutely true. Can we improve this? Diligently performed increasing level of chores for weekly allowance, so that it wasn't just I'm happy doing what I'm doing all the time, that the chores were increasing. And I'm not a huge fan of a lot of adjectives on a resume, but a couple are okay. Diligently performed. Requested the chores at age 8 to demonstrate responsibility. So again, that proactive, a high transferable skill, highly transferable. You want people working for you who are proactive, who see something, if it's a problem or an opportunity, and do something about it. allocated part of the allowance for savings, part for activities, shows responsibility. It's not just there to blow it all, shows that they're thinking ahead. Again, great and transferable skills. This shows this person did this job well. They completed all of their chores on time. So some of the other do's: clear, concise, readable. Someone is going to skim a resume. So large, dense blocks of text are very difficult to skim. A readable font. Times New Roman is still used a lot. I'm not a huge fan of it just because it is a little bit more old-fashioned looking. Readable font, not smaller than 10. Students definitely on one page. So career professionals, mid-level and above, absolutely can and usually should be on 2 pages. Margins, nothing too small, too big. And again, looking at that job. So starting the bullet points with an action verb. So as you saw in that previous example, there's a lot of high impact action verbs. So developed, ran, managed, whatever it is, thinking about starting with an action verb, show that you're doing or did the job well, showcasing those strengths and soft skills, getting feedback. So this is huge because everyone needs an editor, and it doesn't matter who you are. Certified resume writers need editors too. Nobody catches their own mistakes, absolutely. So the idea of having somebody else take a look at your resume, your student's resume before it goes out, really, really important. Let me take a minute here to look at the chat. So no objectives anymore. Great question. So having an objective on a resume, it's just one of those things that is not done anymore. The objective is about you. What do I want? And what you're trying to show is what can you deliver for the employer? So the idea of showcasing that in the summary section as opposed to what do I want? Experience, I cannot think of experiences or volunteer. So is there anything for someone starting out right at the very start? So is there anything in terms of class projects that they've done? Any activities, any clubs that they've been in? Think about those kinds of things. If there's anything like that, if there's absolutely nothing, you could do what's called a functional resume, which is really talking more about those soft skills. They're not enormously in favor. You want to ideally show some sort of experience, whatever it is. So that's a great question. Thank you. Let me see. With skills coming first. Yeah, so there seems to have been a shift in resume format with skills coming first, as opposed to objective, education, experience, skills format, vertical. Do you feel that makes a difference? So potentially. So this gets back to the strategy. So should the skills section come first? So if it's highly, highly relevant to that job, sometimes for technical resumes, for engineers, things like that, skills section comes at the very top. For others, if they've got experience that demonstrates those skills, experience can come next, skills lower down. The idea is to show the most important sections of your resume higher up. There is this concept of top of the fold, which is if a recruiter were to take your resume and fold it in half and looked at only that top half, would they get you? Would they understand you? So putting the most important things higher up. Okay, great question. Thank you. Okay. Don't. So not a fan of templates at all, just because you want your resume to stand out a little bit. And a lot of the templates out there are not congruent with employer applicant tracking systems. So if you're submitting a resume online, for most small, certainly mid and large companies, they've got some sort of applicant tracking system. A lot of the resumes that are created in Canva, for one, have been shown to have problems with a number of these. So not a real fan of using templates. Spelling, grammar, punctuation errors. These are kinds of things that will get a resume thrown out pretty quickly. Lying. So, as a resume writer, I've been asked to do this on client resumes, and I absolutely won't. We'll give a client a Word doc. What they do with it, I can only offer advice, but very, very strongly advise against this. Personal pronouns. So this is just convention that we do not put personal pronouns on a resume. Just convention, there's no big magic or reason behind it. Including the names of your supervisors. Generally, this is a no. And the reason is it's just not relevant. If it's someone who's extremely well known, and you're really trying to highlight that you work for this very well known person, that could be a reason, but generally no. And responsibilities included, that's just wasting space. So start with that action verb and don't waste space on things like responsibilities included. Yes, absolutely, we'll have access to the slide deck. We'll make sure that happens. Long sentences or paragraphs, again, people skim, so nothing too long. GPA under 3.0, just leave it off. If it's a 3.0 or above, would suggest putting it on. It's not needed. So if it's below, just leave it off. So these soft skills were covered. So they're here again, but I'm not going to really spend time on them. Decision-making, problem solving, information, teamwork, reliable. So some of these are going to be more important for some jobs and some more important for others, depending on. So which soft skills to include? Great question. So back to the job description. What are they looking for? What do they need? So if a job description has nothing on it, I hate these, where it's 1 or 2 lines of a job description, you don't really know what they're looking for. You can look at similar job descriptions, absolutely. So this is a great tool. I don't know if anyone has seen this, but let me just show it to you really quick if I can. So what this is, let me put this here. So this tool has been out for over a year. And it's a tool that I use with a lot of clients who are in transition. But what you do is you put in your city and you put in, let's just put in cashier. You put in a job title. It has to be something that LinkedIn recognizes, and they're working on this. In the past year, they've greatly expanded the number of job titles in here. And what this tool does is it goes to all the LinkedIn profiles in LA of people who are cashiers, and it says, what are the skills that they have on their profile? So this is a good list to take a look at. So even saying entry level for everybody else too, good list to look at. Are these skills that I have? Are these skills that I should put on my resume and on my LinkedIn? Are these skills that I need to increase? Then what's interesting about this tool is it looks at everybody else in LA who has these skills on their profile and says, what do they do? So is there a way to use these skills that you've developed as a cashier and do something else with them? So it's a great tool really for anyone who's looking to transition using those skills. You can sort by how similar the jobs are and how popular the transitions are. So going from a cashier to a store associate, these are the skills that are similar. These are the skills that would need to be built. And when you click on these, it takes you to LinkedIn Learning. You can take a class. A year ago, when they brought this tool out, none of these click-throughs worked. Most of them work now, but not all of them. But the idea, they're still working on this. So the idea, some of these are going to be, when you're looking at things, going to be levels, like it could be senior cashier, entry-level cashier, but sometimes they're going to get really interesting pivots. So that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. Let me see, there's something else here. Yes, the slides, they will be, absolutely. Anything else? Good, okay. So that's one. Strategize, think about the job description. What does a cashier need to do? So if there's nothing in there too, you can, a lot of different ideas about thinking about what's in there. ChatGPT. So I'll talk about this at the end of this section. And I did try to look and see what LAUSD's policy was about this tool. And it sounds like it's not being used at this time. I'm not sure about that, if there's been any changes, but that's in the classroom. And this situation, it could be very helpful. So this is just a sample resume. So the idea here, contact information on top. This target job to put a headliner in. So if this person has been a cashier and wants to be a cashier, you could just say cashier up here, or you could say, this is the job I want is a cashier, target job, cashier. Some sort of little summary here, optional. Having strengths or skills could be at the top, could be at the bottom. But again, what are the things that are needed for this job? So interacting with people, a natural helper, math skills, potentially helpful, efficient, reliable, cheerful, detail-oriented, enjoyed working with the team, calm demeanor, that could be really important. Education, so the school, when the diploma is expected, any clubs. So whatever they are, could be a club member. If there's a position, that's great. Even things like perfect attendance award. Terrific. Any kind of projects, that could be included here. Here are the work experience, those high impact bullet points we talked about, and I did add a little volunteering as well. So even if it's something like to have helped at a cleanup day, so a little bit about nature and scope, cleaned at Zuma Beach for 5 hours with a team of 30 volunteers, teamwork, great transferable skill, contacted friends and family to get additional volunteers and provided 8 volunteers a year. So again, that proactive, great skill and result provided extra volunteers. So do want to talk about this. This is really taking over headlines of everything in my field and in a lot of fields right now. So I don't know, I'm really curious if you would put in the chat if you're using this at all in your work. If you would just let me know, I'm really curious if you are. Lots of no's. No. Okay. So yeah, there's tons of articles. This is all over media. So what it is, it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's one of actually many large language models. And what they do is you can interact with this tool usually using natural language. And it goes and it takes all the data that is out there everywhere, consolidates, puts things together, and interfaces in a natural language method. So there's definitely some good about it, because you can put in things like, here is a job description, here's a resume. What interview questions do you think will be asked for this job? And what questions should I ask the interviewer for this job? And it will give you answers. And you can, if you like what you see, you could take that, you can hit regenerate, and it'll give you another set of answers. You can tweak it. There's a lot going on now about it's as good as the prompt. So putting more information. So if you just said, what interview questions would a job for a cashier ask? It'll give you some data. If you put in the job description, it'll give you better. If you put in the job description in your resume, even better. So yes, writes essays, cover letters, does a lot of different things. Does it do it well? So that's a huge question out there. So good and bad on this. So I did put that resume that I shared with you into ChatGPT with a job description for a cashier position and said, can you improve this based on this job description? What it did is it gave me back the same resume, but it added a new section, which wasn't true. It was an experience being a cashier at Home Depot. Well, that never happened. So they even have a word to call this. It says it's hallucinating. It can make things up. So that's the bad. Some concerns about things like being biased. So definitely some issues with it. My take, I think it's a great place to start, but absolutely not a place to finish. So to get ideas, to critically human mind, take a look at what's in there and say, does it make sense? Can I regenerate, get some other ideas from this tool, take what's good, take what I like, and not take everything. There was one story about an HR manager who got the same cover letter from 7 applicants who evidently all used ChatGPT and didn't tweak, didn't regenerate at all, used the same thing. So good and bad, but great in my mind, great place to get ideas for things. So, you know, a lot of good things from it. So, break, any questions? So anyone want to raise hand or put in chat, anything
I
else?
see a couple of hands up, so let me give those
Please.
participants the opportunity to talk. The first one
Yeah.
is Cindy McGee. Cindy, if you'd like to unmute yourself, go for it if you have questions. And
Jackie, I didn't mean to put my hand up. Sorry
oh,
about
no worries whatsoever. Okay,
Thank
and second one, Rubiceli Morales. Please
If you
go
could
for it.
give us access to your slides, because it's asking for permission, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm
So-
sorry, yes, I didn't hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to click on the slides, but it doesn't provide with access. So I just wanted to get that.
Yes, we'll take care of that at the end of the training. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, one more, Brian. Let's see, go for it, Brian.
Yeah, I put my question in the Q&A. So I'm from the private sector before I got into education. So there seems to kind of be a shift in the resume formats from, when we were growing up with, as in yours, where it shows the strengths first or skills are first. They're coming kind of in sometimes it's kind of justified left or right, but they're kind of these creative, and you mentioned templates, but I am starting to see kind of a shift back to the classic, objective education experience skills format. Do you feel like it makes a difference in general or with entry level jobs versus, once they have more experience?
Yeah, so great question. So that gets back to the strategy in terms of what goes higher up on your resume. So you want to show the most relevant things. If they've got experience that's highly transferable to what they're looking to do next, I would put that higher up. If they don't, I would put the skills higher up. And definitely no objective. It's just not on modern resumes now. It's if you're going to put a section at the top, a summary section, for mid and upper, we do branding statements, but it's all about what can you deliver to that employer, not I am seeking, not about me, but what can I do for you? So it's all about that value that you can add to the employer. Great question. Thank you.
And I see a question in the chat, and I'm going to give you a little bit of context for it because it's a great question. So in LA Unified School District, we have what are called CTCs, so Career and Transition Centers, and they are schools for students with moderate to severe disabilities who are not on track to earn a diploma, but will be working towards a certificate of completion. So under federal law, they can stay in school until age 22. So the question in the chat is, should students who are 18 to 22 and attending one of those schools put high school information on their resumes? And the additional bit of context I wanted to provide you is that all of our CTCs have what we call strands, where they are teaching students real life skills. And so I'll just use one that everyone knows really well, the car wash strand, where the students actually learn the skills and people bring in their cars. I still need to bring mine in. It's definitely needs to go in, and the students gain real life experience. Auto detail, thank you, not called the car wash strand. Thank you so much, the auto detail. So I guess the question would be, should students who are attending those schools put that work experience on their resumes?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It demonstrates all those transferable skills. And if you can, put some bullet points underneath it. So, if they're there on time, every single time, absolutely put that on. If they've asked for extra responsibilities, is there any way that they can show that they are doing or did that task well? Definitely want to include it. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And then Brian has his hand up again, I think. So Brian, go for it.
Yeah, again. So this one, I just want to confirm in my experience, I have always told students that if they can to include quantifiable information in the
Yes.
bullet points, I want to make sure that's still consistent with, things like how many calls per day, how many customers per day, how many students you supervise, if it was like a program like that. Is that still?
Yes. So just in that sample resume about increasing the babysitting business by whatever percent in 3 months. Yes, absolutely quantifiable, if possible. Sometimes there just is no way to quantify, or you just don't know. So a lot of times for things like internships, you don't know what happens. But my suggestion is that day one, your student or everybody starts doing any job to see if there's metrics. See if you can take metrics on day one. And then hopefully during your time there, your students' time there, the metrics will improve. So you can take metrics at the end at a particular point where you can say, I improved something. So, those metrics are really important. And I can't tell you how many students I've worked with at university level, going through this, helping them with their resumes and internship experience. No idea what happened on day one, but they know they did a good job. So then it makes it a little bit more challenging, but yes, metrics, absolutely, if at all possible. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, and then in the Q&A, we have a question, Dave Thompson. Dave, you happen to be the inspiration for this week's session, by the way, because you had mentioned to me at one point that employability skills were something that we really needed to learn about. So thanks, Dave, for that. But your question was, when listing the skills, does it make sense to write where one developed the skill? For example, leadership skills through volleyball team captain role.
Oh, yeah. So absolutely. So if they have a leadership position in any club, you definitely want to include that. Absolutely. So anytime that happens, yes. So, and even a little bit more about that. So you could certainly say, volleyball club and the dates, and then put a little bit more underneath it, selected from a team of, I don't know how many there are on volleyball, 20 to lead team for this school year, for however many school years. What did you do as the team leader? So if you're the one that scheduled, if you are the one that polled all the team members to develop a schedule that fit as many requirements as possible. What did you do as that team leader? So a little bit more about that as well, but yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay, and so Linda, this is kind of a put you on the spot question here. So let's see where we were able to go with it. But Lynn asked if you would briefly be able to show us how ChatGPT works before we sign up for it. So I know you probably didn't prep for that, but it seems, so I will go back and say that LA Unified hasn't put out a policy yet about ChatGPT. So we don't have anything to share out with all of our staff about the use of it, or at least I haven't seen the policy, and I usually do see them. Jose says you're not able to sign up at this time. I don't know if that means you're not able to sign up as like a LAUSD user or as an independent user, but I think that there's a lot of unfamiliarity with ChatGPT. So
I would love to. We do need to cover the interviewing section, and I think we've only got like
15 minutes left. So we'll see if we have time to get there. But so Jose says that we can't sign up right now. No more signups right now for ChatGPT.
So try again. It could be just right at this point today. Try again later today at a different time. If it's super busy and you have a free account, sometimes it doesn't let you log on. There are paid accounts, which I think at this point are $20 a month, and that gives you ChatGPT 4. It's a little better tool, as they're working on it. But I've never had a problem logging on, but it could just be because there's a lot of users, right now at this hour today on a Saturday.
Got it. Okay, well, we'll let you continue with the presentation and we'll see if we have time. If not, we may have to bring you back at some point.
Oh, yeah, it's unbelievable. That feeling I had when I got my first delivery from Amazon is how I'm feeling now. That just is changing. So for interviewing, how to prepare, what to wear during, follow up. We'll go back to this a little bit too. So it's doing research. So knowing the job that you're applying for and knowing about the company. So if you're applying for a job at Target and they were just in the news, they just dropped a new collaboration with a designer, and you're applying for a job and working on the sales floor, knowing about that, highly relevant. So knowing about the position and the company, knowing yourself, your strengths, your experiences, you need to be able to talk comfortably and confidently about you, and then why you're the right person for the job. Always need to have questions for them too, just something to make sure to mention. So lots of ways to prepare for an interview, physically and mentally, above and beyond just the prepping, the research point. So things like this are often overlooked, but hugely important. Getting enough sleep, eating a nutritious meal. There's nothing more distracting to an interviewer than someone's stomach going off or things like that happening. So things to manage nerves, stuff like things like deep breathing, listening to music beforehand, just to get yourself in the right frame of mind for an interview. Other things like picturing yourself doing well. So in your mind's eye, just visualize yourself walking in there, smiling, doing really well. That can actually influence your behavior during an interview, and replacing all of those negative thoughts, if you have them, with I can and I will. So in the previous presentation, with things like lack of self-confidence and negative self-talk, this is something absolutely to help the students with, help them practice with saying to themselves, I can and I will. And saying it with a smile even helps more, and saying things out loud too. Smile and say, I'm excited. All of these really, really good things. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Amy Cuddy and her power posing. There is, several videos on this. She's a researcher at Harvard, and her research showed that before an interview, if you power pose, so standing like Superman, feet firmly planted on the floor, hands on hips, standing up straight, and some other power poses, increased hormones, cortisone, and made people physically more able to do better in interviews. So the idea of doing some power posing, another idea that can be really helpful. So the kind of thing, if you're going for an interview, making sure you take a stop at the bathroom beforehand, making sure that your everything is in place, and taking just a minute or two to do a power pose. So what to wear? So this depends a good bit on where you're interviewing. So the idea too that you want to dress neatly, and take a look at the people who work where you want to work and see what they're wearing. The idea that people consciously or subconsciously make assumptions based on when they first meet you, when you first walk in the door, partially on how you carry yourself walking in, partially by what they see in front of them. If you're a student applying for a first job doing filing at a law firm, maybe even dress it up a little bit more. If it's something doing something at a startup, something like that, I would say lose a tie. You can't go too far wrong with a button down, nice slacks and a nice shirt. Can't go too far wrong with that. during the interview. So the idea of, just in case you've got some time before the interview actually starts, by having some icebreakers, just some small talk things. It could even be something like, something that happened on the 405, trying to get into the interview, or you understand there, is a SIG alert on wherever. Being on time, really critical. So being early, a good idea, having that time to make sure that you have that restroom time beforehand, and being polite to everyone you meet. So there have been a number of stories about this at all different levels of people interviewing, where the hiring manager told everyone in the company who had contact with the applicant, from the guard at the parking lot, from the receptionist at the front door, to everybody this person saw, met, walked by, to see, because this hiring manager said, if an applicant is rude to one person, I don't want them. So the idea of the interview starts, right when you pull into that lot. I'm amazed, having been on the other side of the table, people with cell phones ringing, people that don't take the hat off, just could be considered inappropriate. Walking in with confidence, a firm handshake, being brief, highlighting skills, strengths, accomplishments, showing how you match the profile of what they're looking for, and using stories. So stories are memorable. And there is a way to remember stories. The STAR format, sometimes it's called the STAR format or the CAR format, basically the same thing. This is situation, what was going on, the task at hand, the action you took, and result. So sometimes it's challenge, action, result, situation, what did you do, result. Basically, what was going on, what did you do, and what happened. So the idea of making sure that you include all of those. Enthusiasm goes a really long way. So eye contact, and I know this can be difficult for a number of people. So this is something to practice for one. If it is difficult or impossible for some people, it brings up a question, and this is a very long discussion. Do you say something or do you not? There is no one right answer to that, but one idea is to address it proactively. So the idea of the candidate saying, I do want you to know I have difficulty making eye contact. I am present, I am listening, and I'm very enthusiastic and excited about being here. An idea, it's a possibility, something you would need to delve into with your student. Sitting up straight in an open stance, really very important. So just the idea, I don't know if you could see me, but even if it's cold, the idea of sitting with your arms crossed and hunched over gives a very negative view of the candidate. You want to have an open stance, sitting straight. I'm amazed at how many people I've seen in interviews doing just the opposite. Smiling, taking a breath, all important, building rapport if at all possible, no nervous habits. So another story with that, interviewing a candidate, everything's going great until she started playing with her hair, saw some split ends, started looking at the split ends, my colleague I was interviewing with starts kicking me under the table. We're both looking at her split ends. She's looking at her split ends. We really had trouble concentrating on what she was saying. So anything that is being done to distract the interviewer, really try to stay away from. So traditional interview questions, there's usually some variety of these. Tell me about you. What do you know about us? Why do you want this job? Why should we hire you? Some version of these. So going over these with your student, really important. Then the behavioral ones, the story ones. Tell me about a time. How would you handle this? And that's where you look at the job description to help figure out what would they want to know. So, you know, if you're a cashier and there's a long line of people and people are getting angry, that potentially would be a good kind of question that the employer would want to know. So how would you handle a customer that came up and was angry at having to wait in line 5 minutes, you know, and they said something negative to you? How would you answer that? How would you handle it? So where to get interview questions? Glassdoor, great place, another great resource. Chat, you know, another one, talked about that a little bit. And that idea of in those stories, what happened, what did I do, what was the result? If it's a negative one, tell me about a time you failed, a time you didn't do something well. Include lessons learned, so why that isn't going to happen again. Always follow up, thank you, addressing individually, send immediately. So talking about what you can bring, your enthusiasm. If there were any problems that you thought, anything that would give them pause, address those in the follow-up. So something that you didn't say that you wanted to say, you forgot, you can always add it in there. And saying about how excited you are to follow up. So can it help with thank you notes? Yeah, it can, you know, absolutely. So we've got 3 minutes, right? So hang on a sec and let me show you ChatGPT. So you put in a question here, and I want to show you one of the ones I did before we hopped on. What are some interview questions for entry-level cashier at Home Depot? What questions should the candidate ask? And here are some. So these are things that it came up with, questions to ask them. If I didn't like it or wanted to get some other ones, you know, I'd ask it to do it again. So the idea of taking some of these kinds of things, and look how quick, you know, it's just amazing. So with even some of my mid-career clients, writing those branding statements, I've done this together with clients where we put the resume in, put the job description, say, assist writing 4 lines. A branding statement, and first time it went in, a couple of great sentences, a couple of things, so had it regenerate again. Together, we really looked at it critically. Is this addressing exactly what I want or not? Put together a starting point using some of the things that came up and then tweaked it. Now, what else do we want to put in? Do we want to put in one of those metrics that maybe it didn't suggest, but it's a great starting point. Fascinating tool, absolutely fascinating. So any other questions?
I am not seeing any more questions. I'm getting such great feedback by everyone on today's presentation. And I don't know if you caught in the chat, people were saying, oh, this is just what I needed for, my next lessons with my students that I'm working on. And I am also eagerly waiting to look at this just to see, we have people applying for positions in our department right now. And I think this is just such a good tool. So I want to kind of do some comparisons about what we're getting and how we should set expectations. So super informative. In the interest of time, I'll ask if you guys have any more questions, if you can put them in the Q&A or in the chat, because we are going to take a 1-minute break before we move on to our next presentation. And I just want to say thank you again, Ms. Greenfield, for this presentation today. And I did notice along with our participants that when I click on the link for your PowerPoint, that we don't have access to it. So if you don't mind changing the settings on that, or if you can email me a copy of it, I can also drop it and then share it with everybody. So
thank you for letting me know. Perfect.
You.
So delighted to be here and really excited to see the next presenter as well. I know there's a little bit of overlap, so I think it'll be great to go into some things more in depth. And thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're just going to take a quick 1-minute break here, go grab some water, whatever you need to do, and we will get started on our final presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, we're just gonna keep on going here through till 12 o'clock, and I'm gonna introduce our final presenter of the day, and I hope I pronounce your name right. Anna Balieva? Did I get that right? I hope. We're so fortunate to have Anna with us today. She's an entrepreneur, founder, and CEO of The Career Diet. Anna's journey started as an international student who didn't speak English fluently, applied to hundreds of roles, and got endless rejections. After she cracked the code and learned how employers hire, Anna went on to being headhunted for 6-figure jobs, negotiating salaries above industry standard, and successfully switching industries twice without applying. Inside The Career Diet, Anna helps ambitious go-getters achieve clarity on what their dream job is and how to land it. In the last 2.5 years, she's grown an online community of 180,000 people, has been featured in publications like the Business Insider and The Skim, and has several videos that have gone viral on TikTok, which I have a feeling my daughter will probably be jealous she's not participating in this today. So Anna, welcome, and I am happy to hand this over to you. Oh, and let me make you a co-host so you can share your
Yes. Hello. I'm trying to turn the video on, but it says that I can't.
There, you should be good now.
Here you go. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome. And I'm going to hand it over to you, but I will be here to assist with the chat and the Q&A. And thank you again, Ms. Greenfield. Looks like the slides should now be shared. I'll double check that as well. So
yeah, let me know that you can see just the main slide, because
just the main slide. Yep.
All right. There was once I was doing a presentation and it turned out that I was sharing the screen with all the notes. And then I had no idea. I went through the whole presentation and then someone told me after, but then I freaked out, but then they told me, oh, we actually really liked it. Like we kind of felt like, we knew what was coming. So
I can see that too, but yeah, it wasn't your plan necessarily.
All right. Well, we have quite a bit to cover. So I am very excited. I love when I do any sort of presentations, I love for them to be interactive. So I'll stop a few times and kind of get your feedback, your questions. So please do not hesitate. I'm just going to see how I can see. Oh, the chat. All right. Got it now. Just some technical notes. All right. So I'll take just a minute to introduce myself. I know we did an introduction already, but I just want to show you kind of where I'm coming from. And I really want to show you that I've been through the job search process myself and really figuring it out for myself in my own career. And I've been on the recruitment side, so I really know what happens on the employer end. And now I've coached hundreds of students, so I have helped others get to where they want to be in their career as well. So just a few facts about myself. I'm just going to move the screen here. All right, we're good. All right. So as it was mentioned already, so I actually started my career as an international student in Canada, where I now live. And back then, my English wasn't that good, and I really had zero connections. So I firsthand know what it's like to have no support system and really climbing to any sort of success completely on my own. I have also switched careers twice. I went from accounting to consumer goods to recruitment. And I did that without taking a pay cut or starting from the bottom. So I, again, know firsthand how challenging job search can really be. I have also received six-figure offers while living abroad without submitting a single application. So the strategies that I'm going to share with you today and I teach others, those are the strategies that I've practiced myself, and they have led, as you can see, to some pretty cool results. I also have recruited for hundreds of roles with some of the top employers in Canada. So I didn't just learn job search through my own experience. For years, I was on the inside, and I have the insider knowledge of how employers really hire and what's going on behind the scenes. And I have also coached over 600 people inside my coaching program. So what I have learned now has been applied by hundreds of people around the world very, very successfully. And as you have heard already, I've been featured in some major publications like the Business Insider, and I've been a guest speaker at some of the biggest top universities in the world, like the University of Toronto. All right, with that, let's dive into it. So today we're going to focus on three things. I, in general, like things in three, and we can talk about that one once we get to the interview if we have time, but I love things in three. All right, so we're going to talk about the three key success factors in landing an entry-level job. So there are three factors here: your network, your resume, and your interview skills. And that specifically is what I would talk about when I am talking to a high school student. If you were mid-career, some of these things will be slightly different, and the importance of them would be slightly different. But if you're kind of entry level, you're still in high school, you're early in your career, those are the three things that I would focus on. So let's start with number one, network. So first, I want to talk about the reality of the job market. So here is what employers do, and we already know this. They, not sure why this is in light orange, but it should be bright. So they post jobs online, as we know, right? That's not a secret. And we also know that for the most part, they get hundreds of applications for those jobs. Like if you were to apply for a job at Target, they're probably going to be dozens, sometimes hundreds of applications. Now, what a lot of us don't really see and know is that typically employers go a step further, and in addition to just posting the jobs online, they go ahead and they proactively hunt for candidates. And they typically would find maybe a dozen on a good day. And if you're thinking, well, I don't think this is applicable to our students and the kind of jobs that they're going after, that is not correct. In my career, I've hired for entry-level roles that did not require a degree to, multiple six-figure roles. And for all of those, we were hired as an outside firm to look for candidates, because at all levels, including entry level, it is really hard to find the right people. So this absolutely happens. And I was on LinkedIn, on my social media, trying to to find the right candidates for the entry-level job. So this is 100% applicable, even if you're going for an entry-level job. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that employers also do what we in recruitment used to call pre-recruit. So that means that recruiters and employers are always on a hunt. They're always looking to hire. They're always looking, not necessarily to hire, they're always looking for great candidates, for the right candidates, because they know that when the time comes and they have a role open, it's so hard to find the right person in those 2 weeks that they need that person, that they're always on a lookout for great people. So typically, they only have a couple of people that they know already, that they know would be good. So at the same time, so this is what employers do, right? At the same time, if you think about what candidates do, right? They mostly focus on applying for jobs online, right? But here is what I would think about is this, and there are multiple researches that are posted online with these numbers. So only 15% of people get hired through the applications that they submitted online, while the rest, so 85% of people, get hired through the other two. They're either proactively headhunted or they're pre-recruited. So in my actual experience, it was even higher, up to maybe 98% of people who we hired came either as recommendation or we found them, because we just never had the time to wait for the right people to come to us. So what does that mean for you, right? So how do you use this information? Well, you want to be the person in the 85%, right? You want to increase your chances of getting an interview, right? You don't want to just submit the applications online and wait to be noticed out of hundreds of people and only have a 15% chance, right? You want to be on the other side. So how the heck do you get into the 85%? Well, the answer to that is, you probably know already, is networking. Now, before we talk about that and how that can be applied at a high school level, I want to ask you, what came up for you just now when I said networking? Was it maybe fear, maybe anxiety, maybe I find that there are a lot of myths and misconceptions around what it is? Just maybe type in the chat what came up for you. Students don't have a big network. That's right. And again, as a former international student, I definitely feel that I had no connections, interesting connections, knowing people, opportunities, difficult making connections. That's right. All right, so let's talk about that. So first, I want to talk about great way to connect, don't know how to interact in a meaningful way. Okay, we'll talk about all of that. Students do not always have real connection to what post-secondary education can get you. Yes and no. So in general, before we dive into it, my belief is that you make your own connections. So, you know, the phrase, it's all about who you know. I believe that it's all about who you get to know. And I'm a perfect example of that. I did all of that from scratch in a foreign country by myself, all through connections that I have built. So it's all about attitude. All right, so let's dive into it. So first, I want to make sure that we are on the same page, because again, there's so many misconceptions and myths around networking and what it is. And I teach it so much to hundreds of people, and this comes up every single time. So first, we're going to define what networking really is. And I would love for you to start teaching people that and start showing them early on in their career. And honestly, if we teach this in high school, we're going to set people up for success in their career for the rest of their life. So here's what networking is. True networking is a no pressure way of meeting with interesting people to learn about them and what they do. So I offer you to think about networking as an opportunity to meet people, and that's how I would teach it to other people as well, To meet people you want to talk to and learn from. There are no strings attached. I know we're looking for a job here. I know it's counterintuitive, but this is true networking, is just meeting people you want to talk to and learn from. Now, this is in general as a concept, how I would explain networking. Now, when we say this, a lot of people kind of get into the mode of, well, cool, but I don't really know anyone, right? So I think this comes up for a lot of people. Well, who do I meet with, right? Who do I talk to? How do I find them? I don't really know anyone. And especially if you're in high school, this probably will come up a lot, right? I don't really know anyone. Like, what the heck are you talking about? So here's where you want to start. And this is applicable at all levels of your career. You want to start with people who are in your life already, right? So if you're in high school, well, it's probably your parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, neighbors, family, friends, right? Like that's a pretty good start already. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, well, what do I do with that, right? Like if you're in high school and you hear that, well, start by talking to people in your life, neighbors, parents, grandparents, family. Like, what do I do with that, right? What do I say? So I'm going to share a few scripts that you can offer students. And again, just use them as a guidance tool. But again, we want to keep in mind that we're not necessarily connecting with these people or having conversation because we're looking for a job, right? We just learned that it's all about learning, meeting, and learning, right? So when you're meeting with them and having a conversation, that's what you want to keep in mind. And getting a job, right, is a byproduct of those conversations that you'll have. All right, so what do you say? So here are a few examples, and it's all in the presentation. You can download it later. You can screenshot this. So here are some ideas for you. So I'm thinking about, let's say, a career in marketing, right? Enter any other type of career. Is there anyone you know that I can talk to learn a bit about it? That is a great conversation, a great question to ask your parent or your neighbor, right? If, for example, you know that, you know what, all I know is that my neighbor works at a bank. That's all I know. Or that they work in an office. That's all I know. Well, you can talk to them and learn about what they do, right? But if you know that they're not in a career that you're interested in, just ask if there is someone that they know that you can talk to, right? Next example, I'm not sure what I want to do after high school. I'd love to learn a bit more about what you do, right? If your neighbor works in let's say at a bank, right? And you want to learn what that's like, or they work in an office and you have no idea what they do. That's a great approach, right? I'd love to learn a bit more about what you do and ask them for a chat. And I know it sounds scary, but you'll be surprised. Like you'll blow their minds if as a high school student, this is your 2 sentences that you approach them with. Another option for you. I am graduating next year and I'm not sure what career I want to pursue. I have the summer off, so I'm looking to get a summer job to explore working, let's say, in an office environment, or I want to explore getting some firsthand experience in an industry that I can go into later. Is there anyone you know that I could talk to or that I should talk to? Now, when this comes up and you kind of start potentially having some conversation, whether it's your parent or your neighbor, the expectation that I know a lot of people have, especially early, is they feel like when they meet with someone, they're just going to offer you a job. Or let's say your neighbor says, oh, you know what? You should talk to someone I work with. I think you can really learn from them. So they help you have that conversation and you go in thinking that, oh, great. Okay, I got it. They're just going to offer me a job, right? But it's not really how that works. You should go in prepared. Oh, what's happening with the slides here? Here we go. You should go in prepared. And here are the 2 things that I would do. So first, I would research the person that you're meeting with. And I would make sure that I don't ask them questions that I can easily Google the answers to. Right? So if you know that I'm meeting with Uncle Steve, well, first of all, learn their last name, go on LinkedIn and see what they do. Like, try to understand as much as you can where they work and what they do. If you don't understand, try to Google it. So you don't want to go in asking them, well, where do you work, Uncle Steve? No, you need to know that before you go in. You're going to impress the heck out of them if you go in with smart questions. And I'll show you some examples of smart questions in the next slide. But number one, and this is so important, do your research. Everyone's tech savvy now. Just go on LinkedIn. It's all there, right? Do your research. And then based on what you don't understand or what you want to learn more about, prepare questions in advance. And here are some examples of questions that you can ask. Again, you can download the slide, you can take a screenshot. Here are just some examples. If you are a little bit later in your career, I would have a lot more kind of questions that you can ask. But I think early, if you're early in, you're just looking to start your career, maybe just get a summer job, these are great questions to start with. So how did you get started in this industry or this company? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What's the hardest part about working in this industry? Industry, company, start there. It's as simple as that. And I would encourage you, we're looking at the questions on the left here, and I would also encourage you to tell students to think of this person as the most interesting person in the world. Like, what if they are the most interesting person in the world? What can I ask them? Like, that's how I would approach it. Now, the questions on the right here in bold are some of the questions that I would also teach students to ask, but I would ask them at the end of the conversation. So these are the questions to help you kind of move forward with this conversation. So it's not just, okay, great, I learned so much, thank you, which, by the way, is a win in itself, right? If you learn something, that's a win. But here's what I would do next. At the end, I would ask something, again, depending on the conversation that you're having, I would ask something like, what would be the path forward for me if I were to pursue the ABC role or to grow in the ABC industry? So Uncle Steve works in the ABC industry. You ask them all the questions about it, and you're like, you know what? I really liked everything you just told me. And I think I want to explore going into that industry. So what would be the path forward for me? Right? So Uncle Steve might say, you know what? We might be looking for a summer intern. Let me connect you with my colleague, Barbara, right? Or they might tell you, you know what? Let me talk to someone in my office and see who else you can talk to, right? Another question you can ask, what would you recommend for me as the next step to pursue the ABC role, right? So for example, if you are talking to someone and you know that company, like you looked it up online already, you're like, oh, they're hiring. How do I bring that up in the conversation? This is how, right? Another question you can ask, if you were me, how would you approach getting into the ABC industry or ABC company right now? Great, loved everything you told me. How would I approach getting into this industry right now? Right? So you're telling them that I'm interested, but you're not really asking them, well, can you refer me? Can you give me an interview? This is a way to do that, but without really asking for it, right? You're asking for it and they know it, but it feels good compared to, well, can you help me get an interview, right? That just doesn't feel good. Now, a couple of things that I also want to address. So I know that, some students might be in a different position. Like, they're not necessarily looking to kind of not looking at a bigger picture and where they want to end up. They're just, you know what? I'm not looking for anything fancy. Any job, I just need a summer job. Just any job would do. Well, when you say any job, right, you don't really mean it. So first I would think about, okay, well, where would you be interested in working? And if the list looks like this, it can be a coffee shop, it can be the mall, the restaurant, convenience store, movie theater. Okay, well, out of the list, I'm sure some are more interesting to you than others, right? So first, think about where is it that you would want to work out of all of those options. And then, and this is also important, I would ask yourself, well, where can I learn the skills that will set me up for success in the future? And these are, I just wrote down some of the skills that are some of the top skills. Doesn't really matter what career you go into. These are some of the top skills that all employers are looking for. So if you're working at a retail store, right, you're going to be working with customers, you're going to do conflict resolution, you're going to work under pressure, right? So that's how I would think about it. Now, if you're, again, thinking, I just need any job, restaurant, coffee shop will do. So who do I talk to? How do I use this approach? So here's what I would do. And again, you're going to blow their minds away and you're going to stand out so much that you're going to get that interview. So here's what I would do. So look at the list. This is where I want to work for the summer. And I would go in person and ask to meet the manager. I would go into that coffee shop. I would go into that retail store and ask, hey, who's the manager here? I would love to chat with them, right? And here's what I would say. I love the store. I love this coffee shop. Give them a compliment. I notice that you always take such good care of your customers. I'm a student at the ABC school, and I'm looking to get a summer job. Just one sentence about yourself, right? But then I'd love to chat with you for 10, 15 minutes to learn about what it's like to work in retail or to work at a restaurant. When would be a good time to chat? I guarantee they're going to blow their minds away by this approach because they're looking. Remember what we learned in the beginning, that they're looking for great candidates. They're looking for candidates who stand out. And this is how you're going to stand out. Now, I know we have a lot to cover, so I'm just being mindful of the time. So the key takeaway here, and this is applicable whether you're entry level, whether you're 20 years into your career, 40 years, this is still applicable. This is really, really, really important. And the earlier you learn this in your career, the better. Start your job search with people you know. I'm going to look at the chat and see what questions have come up, and if there's anything that you want me to chat about when it comes to networking. That takes a lot of confidence. It does. I personally, when I started, I was terrified. And again, English is my second language. So I was terrified that I would forget what to say, that I would forget English and I would be so awkward. I would quite literally write down everything that I wanted to say, like word by word, not just bullet points. I would write out everything that I would say. And with time, it gets easier and easier and easier. And the earlier you start in your career doing this and relying not on online applications and just waiting to get noticed, but saying, hey, I want to be noticed. I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And I'm going to get noticed, right? The more successful you're going to be. So if anything, I would really talk to students about start with who you know. Start with your family, neighbors, aunts and uncles. Talk to them first before you start firing off resumes. All right, we're going to keep going so that we cover everything. So next I want to talk about, here are the slides. Next, I want to talk about the resume. Now, the question that probably comes up a lot with the students is, well, what the hell do I even include on my resume? I don't have a lot of experience. I don't have much experience, any experience. Well, this might be already familiar to you, but just some ideas of what they can look at: part-time jobs, school projects, any extra curriculum activities that they've done, sports. Sports is so good. If you do sports, please, please, please do include it. Employers love people who do sports. Helping parents, if you're helping parents with a project, include it. Volunteering, all of that can go on your resume. Now, here is what I want for you to take away. Employers obviously know that for this kind of role that you will be really early in your career and that you probably don't have much experience or any work experience yet, And because they know what the role is, they don't expect for you to have all of this experience. So I think that relieves a lot of pressure from students. Hey, they don't actually expect me to have all of this experience. But what they want to see from you is achievements. And what I mean by that is they want to know that you're good at whatever you've done before, because that shows pattern. That shows that you're going to be good at whatever you do next. So this is something very, very important to kind of understand about the purpose of the resume is they want to see that you're good at whatever you've done before, right? So next I want to talk for a couple of minutes about the structure of a resume. So, and again, there's a lot of conversation around it online. If you Google it, there are a lot of opinions, but I personally, so there are two types of resumes. There is the kind of one column classic resume, and there is the what I call pretty resume. So 2-column kind of resume that you can find on like Canva, and there are lots of options online. Now, again, this is my personal opinion, but this has worked for me. I've seen thousands of resumes working in recruitment, and I have seen the other side of recruitment, so the ATS system, which we'll talk about in a second. So this is purely based on my experience. I personally prefer the classic 1-column resume, and all of my clients around the world, over 30 countries, hundreds of people, they all follow the 1-column resume for 3 reasons. So I see 3 problems with the 2-column resumes, and I know that I can see that the students would love this pretty resume because it just looks cooler, right? But there are 3 problems with it. Number 1, because they're not standard when you upload them. If you're, let's say, again, applying for a job at Target and you upload it, it goes to the ATS, so applicant tracking system. And because they're not standard, the ATS system doesn't know how to read them. So when you submit it, what we see is it's just one huge like paragraph of text. It doesn't upload looking like this. It's just one paragraph of text. And you're looking at it, you're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. It's just the square with a lot of text. So this happens pretty much all the time. That's number 1. Number 2, so when that happens, you go in and now you have to open the file. So if a person is reading a file, because all of these pretty resumes are different, so the information is a different spot and you don't really know where to look for it, it takes you extra time to find it. So why are you making it harder for me to find what I'm looking for, right? And then the final piece is probably the most important one. In this pretty resume, there's less space for what really matters, which is what you've done, how good you're at it, right? Because you've used up so much precious real estate on the graphics. So if you can see like the resume on the right, the name and the photo take up, 15% of the real estate, versus the resume on the left is just one line to do the exact same job. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'm in high school, so this is great. Like I need for things to take up space. Think about the problem 1 and 2. Right? So I would stick to, get my personal opinion based on my experience, to the classic resume. So we'll talk about it for just a couple of minutes. So here is how I would approach it in terms of the format. So you have the header. It's just, all you need is a couple of sentences here, right? A couple of lines. And because you're early in your career, I would include your education before your experience. As you get more experience, move up the experience. Right now, you can include your education first. That's also actually applicable once you go to university. You can still include education first. After university, I would move up your experience. So then the main section should be your experience. And we talked about including school projects and projects you do, any sort of projects you help your parents with. Any kind of volunteer experience can also go up in your experience this early on. But you should really aim to have the main section, the biggest part of your real estate, to be experience. And then at the end, what you can add is skills. You can add some personal information. And I am a big fan of including some cool facts about yourself. Oh, something just went black on my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up that you can still?
No, it's actually, for whatever reason, I see that screen is covering. Yeah, there you go. You're
Okay.
good.
I'm not sure what just happened and what just popped up.
No worries. You're good.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So cool facts. I'm a big fan of including personal facts, and it can be things that you're interested in. Maybe if you're a little bit later in your career, I would say like your hobbies, your travel, like anything that makes you, I would include that. Right. And this early on, it can be, I'm an older sister, right? I would include that because that tells me something about you, right? So think about what makes you you and what makes you different from everyone else in your class, for example. That's a good question to ask yourself and include on your resume, because when you walk away, that's how I would think about it. When you walk away, like they're going to interview, let's say 5 people for the same job, right? Everyone has very similar experience. Everyone is, let's say, in high school, right? So this is by including and talking about some personal stuff, and we'll talk about that in interviews as well, is how they're going to know that, oh yeah, that was Jessica. She's the older sister. I remember, or she plays soccer. Okay, I remember her, right? So don't be afraid of including personal facts, and that actually goes for kind of later in your career, still applicable. All right, next I want to talk about 2 important factors for the resume, and there are more than 2, but we'll focus on some of the key ones for being a high school student, right? So number 1 is power verbs. And you can use, I saw when I joined that you guys were looking at ChatGPT, you can use it actually to help it create this for you in these kind of bullet points. We'll talk about what that is in a second, but you still need to understand what it is that you're looking to do and to achieve, right? But ChatGPT actually really, really good to help you to come up with the right statement using the power verbs. And then we'll also talk about achievements. So what are they? Power verbs. They're action verbs that help you highlight the value you created in each role or any experience that you've had. You can Google it, power verbs. There's a whole list that comes up. But here's how I like to think about it. It's verbs like manage, lead, create, grow, initiate, increase, reduce, develop. So I want you to start your resume, every single bullet point with a power verb. I know it can be hard. It can be hard, but we'll look at a couple of examples of what can be done. So let's look at the 2 examples, with and without. So let's compare. I took care of daily operations of the store. Let's say you worked at a store and you took care of daily operations. What the heck does that mean, right? So if we just change that to I managed daily operations, right? Like all of a sudden you're a manager, right? It's just the power of using just that right verb. Another example, I was responsible for, lots of people love to say that. I was responsible for, let's say, opening the coffee shop in the morning. Okay, well, what if instead you managed it, right? Don't, like, I would really stay away from to care, responsible for, because it doesn't really show me anything. It's just a copy pasted line from a job description. It doesn't tell me if you're good at it or not, right? It doesn't show me that you are that star, right? Star candidate who takes initiative, who leads, who manages, right? And it doesn't matter where you are in your career, it's still applicable. Okay, let's say I worked on the XYZ project for the ABC class. Okay, well, let's get a little bit more specific. We didn't just work on it. Let's say we developed something, we delivered. What was it that you worked on? What was the project, right? Was it a presentation? Was it like recommendations? What was it, right? That you developed and delivered. So this very simple change instantly transforms your resume and just profile in general, right? Because again, as we just said, all of a sudden you're a manager, a leader, you're someone who takes initiative. So this is just key. Again, you can just Google power verbs online and there's a whole list, and I would make sure that you start every single bullet point with a power verb. Again, if you learn it when you're 16 and then apply it for the rest of your career, you're good. Okay, the second key thing is with that each and single bullet point, you want to focus on your achievements. So your goal, and we briefly talked about that already, your goal is to show the employer that you've excelled at whatever you've done in the past, right? So you want to show that you're a star at whatever you've done by highlighting all the amazing things that you've achieved in each of your experiences. Now, again, it can be sometimes hard to think of achievements. So let's look at some examples, and I'll give you a hack for when you don't really know what achievement you had. All right, so let's compare two examples. One is, I was responsible for greeting the customers and providing top-level customer service. So greeting the customers, you probably just knew that you had to do that, and then providing top-level customer service, you probably saw that in the job description, so that goes into your bullet point. But if I read that, I'm thinking, okay, well, did you provide top-level service, right? You were responsible for it, but did you actually do it? Were you good at it? What were the results? Like, that is what is going on in my mind when I read it, right? So instead, and this is just an example, right? But instead you say, well, I actually know, you think, okay, I actually know that summer when I worked at the store, our sales went up 10%. Okay, you can change it to increase store sales by 10% in summer period as part of the sales team. You don't have to say that you did it on your own as part of a team, right? But providing outstanding customer service and maintaining a solid repeat client list. Now, if you're struggling, like, achievements can be sometimes really hard for people to identify. So if you're struggling with it, here's what I would think about. Feedback. If you received positive feedback from your manager, from your customer, this is your achievement. You can quite literally add that in the bullet point. Consistently received positive feedback from customers. That's an achievement, right? All right. So the key takeaway here with your resume is that your resume should market you as a star, whatever you've done before. Now, again, we can talk about any of these topics actually for hours. So I really try to focus on some of the key points. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions about a resume. On my website, there is a whole guide. It's free. You can download it on resumes that goes over 10 important steps to make sure that are covered in your resume. And it has templates as well. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you can use that. It's free. Just download it. All right. I'm going to look at the chat for a second. All right. I'll keep an eye on the chat, and we'll cover any questions at the end, because I want to make sure that we cover everything that I wanted to talk about. All right. Let's keep going. So we talked about, here we go. We talked about network and we talked about resume. Now let's talk about interview skills. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this. And this is something to really drill into people's heads, is employers are not there to trick you. They're not there to make life hard for you. They don't want to interview you because they love interviewing people. None of that. When they invite you to interview, they want you. They sincerely hope they're going to hire you. That's how they go into the interview thinking, oh my gosh, I hope we're going to hire this person because we've been at it for weeks now. We have this role. We really need someone. I really hope we're going to hire this person. So this, as a candidate, this gives you a lot of power and relieves a lot of pressure, knowing that it goes both ways, right? You need a job, but they really need you. They really want to hire you. When they go in, again, like, just keep reminding people this, that when they interview you, when they invite you to interview, they sincerely hope they're going to hire you. That just helps mentally so much. All right. So when it comes to interviews, employers know that you don't have a lot of experience. Obviously, right? Like, they know what role they're interviewing you for. They, by this point, either have seen your resume or they got introduced to you through your uncle, right? They know you're in high school. They don't expect for you to have experience, right? So they know that you don't have a lot of skills, and that's okay, because they know that they can teach you all of those skills. Now, what they cannot teach you is, I call them traits. So what kind of person you are, how you do things, what kind of attitude you have. They cannot teach you that, right? You have that. That's your trait as a person. So this early on in your career, because again, you feel like, well, I haven't really done a lot of things. Like, I don't really, like, what am I marketing here, right? So here's what I would think about. I would look at your traits at this point rather than skills. So these are traits. Again, you can Google them, like list of traits, or you can just look at them in the slide. But I would really just show people this list of traits, right? And then here's what I would do next, right? So instead of your skills, I would look for your traits as someone who is in high school prepping for an interview. So here's what I would do. So first, I would look at the role itself. I would look at the job description and think, okay, well, what traits would be most important for someone in this role, right? If you are working in customer service, right? Or if you're opening the coffee shop in the morning, punctual probably, right? If you're in customer service, energetic, dependable, right? You need to be on time, right? Like that's pretty straightforward, right? And a lot of these things, right? You can just, it's really clear from the job description, right? If you're opening the store, it's very clear that they want someone who's punctual and dependable, right? So first start there. Then go to your resume and look at everything that's on your resume, school projects, sports, volunteering, anything that is already on your resume. So every single one of those experiences, look at them and think, well, where have I demonstrated these traits, right? In sports, right? I play team sports, right? My team can depend on me, that I can always show up because I know that they need me, right? So go through each and single one of those experiences that are on your resume and compare it to the list of traits and see, okay, what do I have? What have I shown that is also important to the employer, right? And then think of specific examples where you have demonstrated those traits, right? So if let's say one of the things you want to talk about is being an older sibling, right? Well, think of a specific story of how your family relied on you for help as an older sibling, right? To show that, let's say, you're dependable, right? So once again, just to reiterate. So first, look at the job description. What is it that they're looking for? Second, look through your resume and see in which experiences you've demonstrated that, what they're looking for, and then think of specific examples. Now, I'm going to show next an overview of how I would prep for an interview. Now, you can kind of dial it down, and I already have dialed it down as I was prepping for this. So if you were kind of mid-career, I would go a little bit further. But I have already dialed it down. So feel free to dial it down even further. But where a lot of people kind of get stuck, they Google, right? Interview questions, and they see like a list of hundreds of questions, and they just have no idea. Like, okay, well, which one do I prep for? There's so many. I don't even know I can prep for this. And you just don't prep altogether, right? So here is how I would think about it. Instead of questions, like individual questions, and again, there can be hundreds, I would think of categories. So here are the top categories that I would focus on. Leadership, teamwork, and leadership, you can probably put an asterisk to it in high school, but in general, important category: leadership, teamwork, conflict resolution, initiative, failure, or any sort of adversity, managing stress, ability to adapt, client-facing experience, time management. Now, what you see in kind of dark blue here are the categories that potentially are, for some of the roles that a high schooler would go for, are important, like managing stress, client-facing, time management. Those are some of the important skills for, let's say, someone who's going to work in retail, right? So start with those here, right? So here's how I would approach it. So instead of thinking of specific answers for questions, right, I would think of categories, and I would prepare stories for categories. And now all of a sudden, you don't need hundreds of answers. All you need is specific examples for categories. So the question can vary, right, within the category, right? but all you need is stories for categories. Now, another thing that I would think about, in general, I would prep at least one, makes sense, right? At least one story for each category. And you can use the same story for multiple categories, right? So you just change what you highlight in that story slightly, but you can use it. Like the same story can be an example for, let's say, conflict resolution and initiative, right? So, or teamwork and conflict resolution. Maybe your team that you were working with on a high school project, you had a conflict and you helped to resolve that conflict, right? So here's a story for both, right? So I will at least have one story for each category. Ideally, if you have a couple, that will just help you. But here I just kind of show you an example of how the same story can be used for multiple categories. Now, if you're showing this to students and you're thinking, okay, well, maybe they don't necessarily need to show leadership yet, just cut out this category, right? Later on, as they get more experience and they kind of grow in their career, there are more categories, a couple more. But if you want to distill it for them, you can do that too, right? If you are in a time crunch as a student and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many stories to think about. What the heck do I do here? I have an interview tomorrow, right? So in a time crunch, just again, you're going back to the job description. You're looking at, okay, well, what is it that they're talking about, right? So show up on time. Okay, let me prepare a story on time management, right? So if you're in a time crunch, focus on the categories and stories that are most important for the type of role that you are after. All right. I'm going to look at the comments. So the key takeaway with interviews is that you always want to start by thinking about what is it that the employer is looking for? What is it that is important to the employer? And then you're looking inward, right? You're looking for examples of your life in your experience, proving that you have what they want. And something to really drive home here for people is that your example can be, again, family, can be being an older sibling, sports, like anything. It doesn't have to be specifically from working somewhere. It can be from school, it can be from interacting with people at school. All of that works. And in fact, I encourage people mid-level of their career to continue to use examples that are a little bit more personal, so that same as with the resume, when you walk away, they remember, oh yeah, that's Tom. He plays volleyball on a team, and this is yeah, I remember him. Okay, so let me know. We have a few minutes for questions. So we have talked about networking. We have talked about resumes. And again, there is so much to cover in each of these topics. So I'm sure you have some questions that you'd love for me to go over. So we talked about networking, we talked about resumes, and we talked about interviews. While I'm waiting for questions, here are some resources that you can share with students. Here's my website, and I'm very active on social media, Instagram, TikTok. You can just share the name with the students and they will, I think, learn a lot. There are lots of videos on interviews and on resumes and on networking. There's a lot of conversations that we're having around that. So please do share, because I think it's different when maybe they hear it at school versus hear it from someone on the outside. Oh, and one more thing. On my website, thecareerdad.com, there are quite a few free resources that you can download. There's, as I mentioned, there's the resume guide. There is the questions to ask in an interview. So all of that is free. You can download it, you can use it, and you can send those to the students as well.
Thank you. And I think this information is on the resources organizer that
I
is,
believe so. Yes.
yes, that is in the chat. So I just put it in the chat one more time if you wanted to grab it. It also has the link to today's feedback survey at the top of the organizer. But I love that this resource is something that you guys can give directly to students. It's awesome because a lot of the resources are for us as educators. And so here's a website, and in true student fashion, social media, where students can locate this information for themselves. And I'm going to be honest, I have 2 boys in college, so I've been texting them updates. And my one son, who he's going to be a senior, he just texted me back and he's like, yeah, the resume I'm working on, I was just told by my college counselor to use the 1-column format. So great. So I was like, okay, great.
Yes.
All right, so that I'm glad that same message is being shared. And I think Lynn put in the chat earlier, oh my goodness, like it wasn't something that as educators, I don't think I knew how to direct a student to one or the other. I think you know which one is more visually pleasing. And because in education, we don't use some of those behind the scenes like HR systems, maybe our HR department does, but we certainly don't when we're hiring internally. So I don't think that we would have had that insight in order to direct students one way or the other. So thank you so much of the information, but that definitely resonated with me personally. So we do have another minute or 2 for questions. If you have anything that you want to ask. Oh, here's one in the chat.
Love the ideas of using stories and concentrating on how you stand out. That's, David, that's huge, because here's actually, I remember I heard this in university, and it really stuck with me. And that was over 10 years ago. And it really stuck with me. And it was the concept of, well, think about when you're including something on your resume. And that was specifically with university example, but that was like, let's say you include, I'm a member of the accounting club. Cool, but so are hundreds of people, right? Now, if you put, I'm the president of the accounting club, now you're the only one, right? So in general, that's how I would think about like your experience and your resume, right? So how do I show them that I'm different, right? That I do more, that I excel at those things that I do. Okay, there was a question. Do you recommend video links for students to see interviews of adults working in various fields, such as road trip? I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you mean for students to understand kind of what different careers are like? Is that what you mean?
I think she's saying maybe. Oh yeah, I think that looks.
I'm going to stop sharing so I can.
Okay.
You can
Cruz,
just
if
see
you
me.
want to, you can raise your hand and then I can ask you to speak. Or, but I do think that's what she's saying. Yeah, videos of adults.
Okay, love this question. So, 2 things that I would recommend. If you have, and kind of teaching people how to discover what their dream job is kind of my area of expertise. So here's what I would do. And again, it's a big process, but this early on, and I really hope that we start teaching this people as early as in high school, is researching and exploring. That means that yes, other people in the industry is great. In this day and age, TikTok, by the way, is great. If you Google a day in the life of a digital marketing manager, you can find that and you can get a glimpse of what they do, right? So there are tons of resources as simple as that on social media, like a day in a life of a lawyer, and you realize, oh my gosh, they're just at their desk all day. I don't know if I want that, right? So that's kind of number 1, right? But number 2, back to what we talked about earlier, which is networking, right? That's what I would do. And that's what I teach people to do as well. And as a high school student, you can be like, hey, mom and dad, or hey, Uncle Steve. I don't know why I keep bringing up this Uncle Steve, but hey, Uncle Steve, I am interested in a career in insert, right? Finance, law, marketing, whatever it is, right? That comes up. Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone in this role, in this career that I can talk to? I just want to see what it's like, what they do. Do they like it? right? Like that is the number one step of where I would start. Now, if usually I even teach you kind of to go a step further and find people on LinkedIn and reach out to them and have those conversations. But in high school, I would at least start with people who are adults, let's call them adults in your life, and asking them who they know, right? Asking you guys, right? Like ask your teachers, like, do you know anyone by any chance who works in marketing or who works in HR, who works in recruitment? I just want to like understand what they do, right? You just never know. People will go, you know what? I went to high school with someone who I think is now in blank industry, right?
That
So
is so
that's
true.
that really is the way to understand what those careers and roles, like what they really are, what they do on a daily basis. That is the only way. And again, like if you're mid-career, I would tell you the same thing. Like you have to talk to real people in real jobs, because think about yourself, right? Unless it's your colleague doing the exact same job that you do, no one in your life really knows what exactly you do. Like even your spouse, your partner, they kind of know, right? But not really. So you have to talk to people.
Yeah, super true, because I've actually been in touch with friends that I went to high school with at various points in my life because of their career choice. And I've seen that on social media, what they're doing to ask them questions or to network with them. Well, in the interest of time today, we are at the 12 o'clock hour. I'm just going to thank you again. I'm so glad, Linda, you were able to stay on with us and hopefully hear some of today's presentation. Thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone who was in the audience today for your participation and for humoring me with our no music start today. I know it was a little bit boring without Anne and her music at the beginning, but I think today's information was so worth it for those of you who were able to come. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks for our next presentation for those of you who are coming on April 29th. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. And thank you so much. It was very nice to meet both of you.
Thank you.
For
It's a
having
delight.
us.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Enjoy your
Bye.
Saturday.